Chapter 1. At the edge of familiar. The city lay stretched under a blanket of thick, gray clouds, casting a dim, muted glow over the bustling streets. Catherine found herself standing alone on the crowded sidewalk of Manhattan, a place that had once felt exhilarating, filled with opportunity and excitement. But today, the city was only a churning sea of strangers, each face indifferent, every step forward an echo of her own restless, wandering spirit. Years ago, New York had beckoned to her with promises she couldn't resist. She had left her small-town life behind, envisioning herself becoming someone new, shedding the shadows of her past like an old, outgrown coat. Yet the city hadn't kept its promises. The dreams of endless success and happiness had turned to fading mirages, replaced by a nagging emptiness, a familiar ache that crept up in the quiet hours, leaving her more isolated than ever. Now, at 28, she saw the city's gleaming skyscrapers and crowded avenues with different eyes, each a reminder of dreams that seemed to dangle just beyond her reach. Catherine inhaled deeply, filling her lungs with the thick scent of rain-soaked pavement and the faint traces of smoke rising from a nearby food vendor. She clutched the worn leather strap of her bag, as if grounding herself against a world that seemed to spin faster with every passing second. Life in the city had turned routine, but not comfortable. She felt as though she stood at the edge of a precipice, teetering between the person she had wanted to become and the person she was afraid she might remain. As the weight of her thoughts pressed down on her, she noticed a subtle warmth that filled the air, a sudden and unexpected feeling, as though an invisible thread was tugging her forward. A surge of intuition struck her. She felt as if something or someone was watching her. Though she couldn't explain why, she felt drawn down the street, her legs carrying her forward without conscious thought. It was at the corner of 6th Avenue that Catherine first felt the prickle of familiarity. The street was quiet, nestled away from the roaring traffic. The buildings that lined the block were old, their bricks worn by decades of weather and time. There was a sense of history in these walls, as if they whispered stories of lives that had come and gone, of hopes and heartbreaks etched into the city's memory. And it was here, in this quiet pocket of New York, that her eyes met his. David stood just beyond her line of sight, leaning against a wrought iron fence, the collar of his coat turned up against the chill. He was barely noticeable in the dim light, almost as if he had melted into the shadowy outlines of the buildings behind him. His presence, though quiet and unassuming, radiated a kind of strength, an energy that caught Catherine off guard. She couldn't place him, yet something about him felt strikingly familiar, as if she had known him once, or perhaps always. David had been in the city for longer than he'd care to count, his roots tracing back to a small, forgotten town nestled between mountains and rivers, much like Catherine's own hometown. His journey to the city had mirrored hers, a relentless chase of a dream, a break from a past that seemed to cling to him like mist. Yet New York had taken its toll on him, leaving behind a man wearier, quieter, his spirit dulled by the same routines that had chipped away at Catherine's once bright spark. As Catherine watched him, a flicker of recognition crossed her mind, an unspoken acknowledgement that neither would understand but both could sense. She felt a chill slide down her spine, knowing instinctively that her life was about to change in a way she could neither anticipate nor control. This stranger, cloaked in mystery and standing quietly under the looming skyscrapers, seemed to carry with him a part of her past she hadn't known was missing. David straightened as their eyes met, the faintest hint of surprise in his gaze. But it wasn't a recognition of familiarity. Rather, it was a shared understanding, as if he, too, felt that invisible pull between them. There was something in his eyes, a touch of sorrow, a hint of hope that mirrored her own. And then, just as quickly as the connection sparked, it faded. The moment passed, and the crowd closed around them like waves reclaiming the shore, pulling her forward in one direction and him in another. But Catherine's mind clung to the image of him, a faint silhouette against the darkened streets of a city that had both cradled and burdened her. Without knowing his name, his story, or the reason behind the strange familiarity she felt, she sensed that their lives had become intertwined in that single instant. Unaware of the path she was now on, Catherine found herself standing at the edge of something terrifyingly unfamiliar yet hauntingly close. And with a heart full of unasked questions and a strange, inexplicable longing, she disappeared into the crowd, carrying with her the shadow of a man she had never known but couldn't seem to forget. Chapter 2. The Trace She Left Behind. David walked the streets with a heaviness that seemed woven into the fabric of the city itself. The encounter with the stranger had left a trace, a faint but undeniable presence that lingered in his thoughts like a barely audible melody. He could still see her silhouette etched against the city's gray backdrop, feel the pull of her eyes, as if they had spoken volumes without ever uttering a word. For reasons he couldn't explain, the encounter haunted him. It stirred something within him, an unsettling reminder of memories he had long buried beneath years of solitude and silence. David had learned to live as a ghost in the city. He moved through the crowds, unnoticed and unaffected, his life marked by the routine of days blending seamlessly into nights, one season bleeding into the next. In the blur of his existence, he had become a man of little consequence, his past reduced to faded snapshots hidden in the recesses of his mind. Yet, despite his best efforts to remain unseen, something had changed with that fleeting encounter. The woman, her face half hidden by a cascade of dark hair, her eyes filled with an undefinable sadness, had left an indelible mark. That evening, David returned to his small apartment overlooking a quiet, forgotten alley, the world outside his window darkening as the sun sank behind the skyline. His apartment was as unremarkable as his life. Bare walls, furniture worn with age, the faint scent of stale coffee lingering in the air. But tonight, for the first time in years, he felt a shift in his perception, a restlessness that gnawed at him. The loneliness he had grown accustomed to suddenly felt sharper, the silence more oppressive. He found himself pacing the narrow length of his apartment, his mind circling back to the woman on the street and the strange, unspoken connection they had shared. She felt familiar, yet he knew they had never met before. He sifted through memories like pages of an old, forgotten book, searching for anything that could explain the sense of déjà vu. But the years had a way of blurring the edges of his memories, leaving only fragments of faces and places he could no longer recall with clarity. The woman on the street was just another puzzle piece in the scattered landscape of his past, a landscape he had spent years trying to escape. Days passed, but her image remained fixed in his mind, becoming sharper with each passing hour. He could recall the way her gaze had lingered, the slight tilt of her head as if she, too, had felt the inexplicable pull. There was an unspoken recognition between them, a familiarity that defied logic. He became haunted by the possibility that she represented something he had lost or left behind, something he could not afford to ignore. Catherine, on the other side of the city, was experiencing a similar, unnerving sense of déjà vu. The city seemed to mirror her emotions. Everything around her felt muted, distant, as though she were moving through a dream. Her encounter with David had planted a seed of longing, a curiosity that grew with each day. She found herself replaying that fleeting moment, questioning the strange sense of familiarity she had felt. It was as if she had brushed against a part of herself she had forgotten, a fragment of her soul she hadn't known was missing. Despite her best efforts to suppress it, the memory of David haunted her. Each night, she wandered the city, searching for something she couldn't name, hoping to encounter him once more. She retraced her steps through crowded avenues and quiet alleyways, her eyes scanning every face in the hope of catching a glimpse of the stranger who had, inexplicably, found his way into her thoughts. On one of these solitary walks, Catherine found herself at an old bookstore nestled in a forgotten corner of the city, a place she had visited only once before. It was dimly lit, the shelves lined with dust-covered tomes, the scent of aged paper filling the air. She moved slowly through the aisles, her fingers trailing along the spines of books, each touch grounding her in the present yet stirring memories of the past. In the back of the store, she discovered a forgotten journal, its pages filled with faded ink and handwritten notes. Without understanding why, she felt compelled to open it. As she read, a peculiar sensation washed over her, the words on the page resonating with emotions she couldn't explain. The journal belonged to a woman who had once felt trapped between a life she couldn't leave and a love she couldn't forget. The passages were filled with a yearning for freedom, a desire to escape the weight of her past, yet an unshakable connection to a man she had known only in fleeting glances. Catherine felt her heart race, each word bringing her closer to the stranger on the street, as though their lives were bound together by threads woven through time. The feeling was surreal, almost otherworldly, as if she were reading fragments of her own life story. She tucked the journal under her arm and left the bookstore, her mind spinning with questions and emotions she had long suppressed. She felt as though she were on the brink of a revelation, a truth that lay just beyond her reach. The connection between her and the stranger, she now realized, was no mere coincidence. It was as if fate itself had led her to him, guiding her through the city's labyrinthine streets, pulling her closer to the man who, inexplicably, felt like a part of her own soul. For the next few days, Catherine found herself drawn to the places she had visited before, the corners and streets where she had felt his presence lingering like a shadow. She became attuned to the city's subtle rhythms, the unspoken language of its streets and buildings, as though she were following an invisible thread that wove through the city's heart. She sensed that he, too, was searching, that somewhere in the vastness of New York, they were moving toward each other, drawn by a force neither could control. David, meanwhile, found himself pulled back to the same corner of 6th Avenue where he had first seen her. The street seemed quieter now, the air filled with a strange expectancy, as though the city itself held its breath, waiting for their paths to cross once more. He stood at the corner, his eyes scanning the faces of passers-by, each heartbeat echoing with anticipation, each moment filled with the possibility of reunion. In that vast, impersonal city, they remained separated by only a few streets, their lives converging in a silent dance of fate and longing. Though they were unaware of each other's movements, they both felt the pull, the magnetic force that wove their stories together. The trace she left behind haunted David, a whisper in his mind that he couldn't escape. He had spent years running from his past, yet now, he found himself drawn into the unknown, compelled to chase a ghost he had never known. And in the quiet depths of their solitude, as they walked the same streets under the city's indifferent gaze, both Catherine and David sensed that their paths were bound to intersect once more. But what lay at the end of this journey, whether answers, redemption, or heartbreak, remained shrouded in mystery, a truth waiting to be uncovered beneath the city's silent facade. Chapter 3: When Fire Meets Ice. The first hints of winter were settling over New York, transforming the city into a landscape of muted grays and whites. The chill in the air was sharp, biting, and relentless, making the people on the streets clutch their coats tightly around them, their breaths forming ghostly puffs that vanished into the cold sky. Yet amidst the frozen silence, there was a lingering energy, a quiet intensity that seemed to hang in the air, like the charge before a storm. For Catherine, The approaching winter felt symbolic, mirroring the icy barriers she had built around herself over the years. Despite the warmth of her thoughts and the memories of better times, her heart felt as though it were encased in frost. She had become adept at numbing herself to the disappointments and hardships life in the city threw her way. She wore her isolation like a cloak, shielding herself from the raw vulnerability of hope and connection. Yet, deep down, there was an ember that refused to be extinguished, a tiny spark that had been ignited the moment she had locked eyes with the stranger on that quiet street corner. The days stretched on, filled with mundane tasks and unremarkable moments, yet she felt an internal tension growing. There was something about that man, something that thawed the layers of ice within her, leaving her both exhilarated and terrified. Her thoughts returned to him in idle moments, her mind sketching his face in fragments, her memory piecing together every detail of their brief encounter. She saw his face as clearly as if he stood before her, his gaze as piercing and unreadable as the winter sky. Her footsteps led her through the familiar streets, each corner holding the possibility of another encounter, yet he was nowhere to be found. She was drawn, inexplicably, to the places they had both frequented, the narrow alleyways, the quiet bookstores, the hidden cafes tucked away from the bustling crowds. She wandered, searching, hoping to find him once more, though she wasn't sure what she would say or how she would act if she did. And as she wandered, she felt herself unraveling, the ice in her heart slowly melting, leaving her exposed to emotions she had long suppressed. Meanwhile, David felt as though he were standing on the edge of a frozen lake, each step forward cracking the ice beneath him, threatening to plunge him into the unknown depths below. The encounter had awakened something dormant within him, something he had kept buried beneath layers of indifference and solitude. He had spent years learning to live with the coldness of his own heart, insulating himself against the painful memories of a life he no longer recognized. But Catherine's face lingered in his thoughts, breaking through the walls he had built, leaving him vulnerable in a way he hadn't felt in years. He became consumed by the idea of finding her again, retracing his steps to that same quiet corner, hoping to catch another glimpse of the woman who had left such an indelible impression. He would stand there, his gaze scanning the faces of passing strangers, his heart racing with anticipation, each heartbeat an echo of longing he couldn't ignore. The city, once a backdrop to his isolation, now felt alive, charged with the possibility of their reunion. He felt as though he were caught in a strange dance, circling around her without ever drawing close enough to touch, his heart suspended between fear and hope. Days turned into weeks, and winter settled over the city in earnest, blanketing it in snow and silence. The landscape grew harsher, the cold sinking into the bones of the city, freezing rivers and frosting windows. And yet, amidst the freezing air, there was a warmth that burned within them both, a fire that refused to be extinguished even as the world around them grew colder. One evening, as snow began to fall in soft, delicate flakes, Catherine found herself drawn to Central Park. The trees stood bare and skeletal, their branches dusted with snow, and the paths were almost empty, save for a few stray footprints trailing off into the distance. She walked slowly, her breath clouding the air, her steps muffled by the thick layer of snow beneath her feet. She felt as though she were moving through a dream. The world around her softened, muffled, as if she were the only person left in existence. It was then, beneath the pale glow of the streetlights, that she saw him. David stood by the edge of the frozen lake, his silhouette stark against the white landscape. He was motionless, his gaze fixed on the surface of the ice, his face illuminated by the soft glow of the snow around him. There was a stillness to him, a quiet intensity that seemed to draw her in, and for a moment, Catherine felt as though time had stopped. The fire within her flared to life, melting the last vestiges of ice that had clung to her heart, leaving her exposed, raw, and vulnerable. She watched him from a distance, her heart pounding in her chest, each beat a resounding echo in the silence. She felt an overwhelming urge to call out to him, to close the distance between them, but something held her back, a fear, perhaps of the unknown, of the possibility that this fleeting moment might be all they would ever have. David, as if sensing her presence, turned slowly, his eyes meeting hers across the snow-covered expanse. There was a look in his gaze, a mixture of surprise, recognition, and something deeper, something that went beyond words. In that instant, the fire within him blazed to life, melting the coldness that had gripped his heart for so long. He felt as though he were standing on the edge of a precipice, drawn toward her by a force he couldn't explain, a desire that had simmered beneath the surface, waiting for this very moment to ignite. But as the snow fell between them, blanketing the world in white, they remained motionless, each bound by their own fear, their own uncertainty. The fire within them raged silently, a tempest of emotions that neither could contain, yet neither dared to act upon. They stood there, two strangers bound by an unspoken connection, each carrying the weight of their pasts, each fearful of what the future might hold. The snow continued to fall, obscuring their view, blurring the edges of the world around them. And in that moment, they both realized that they were no longer standing alone. The fire within them, though hidden beneath layers of ice, had finally found a match, a spark that would ignite their souls, melting the barriers they had built, drawing them together in a way that defied logic or reason. As the night deepened and the snow thickened, Catherine turned and walked away, her footsteps soft and silent, leaving no trace of her presence behind. David watched her go, his heart heavy with a longing that filled every fiber of his being. He wanted to follow her, to break the silence, to reach out and touch the fire that had sparked between them. But he remained rooted to the spot, watching as her figure disappeared into the distance, a shadow fading into the night. And as he stood there, alone beneath the falling snow, he felt the weight of his own fears, his own doubts, pressing down on him like the cold that had frozen the lake at his feet. He knew, with a certainty that left him breathless, that this was only the beginning. The fire within him would not be extinguished so easily. It would burn on, bright and fierce, waiting for the moment when they would meet again, when they would finally break through the ice that separated them. For in the vast, indifferent expanse of the city, in the cold heart of winter, fire had met ice. And though they had parted, they knew that their paths would cross again, that their stories were bound together, waiting for the moment when they would finally be set ablaze. Chapter 4: The Silence Between Us. The air in New York grew colder with each passing day, as though the city itself were holding its breath, waiting. Winter had wrapped itself around the landscape, freezing rivers and turning the city's towering buildings into cold, silent sentinels under an icy gray sky. The snow piled along the streets, muffling sounds and casting a hushed atmosphere over everything. For both Catherine and David, the chill felt more like a haunting than the predictable arrival of another season. Catherine found herself drawn more and more to Central Park, her footsteps leaving faint trails in the snow as she wandered the familiar paths. It was as though the park held secrets hidden beneath the frost-covered landscape, clues scattered like breadcrumbs along the frozen trails, each one leading her further into a mystery that both scared and fascinated her. She wasn't sure what she was searching for, whether it was him, the man who had so unexpectedly reignited the warmth in her heart, or perhaps something within herself that she had long forgotten. David, too, found himself returning to that spot near the lake, his mind and heart entangled in thoughts of the woman he had met only once yet felt as though he had known all his life. The memory of her face was sharp, etched in his mind like the lines of an unfinished sketch, and he replayed it again and again, trying to grasp the significance of that fleeting encounter. There was something about her that had shifted his world, pulling him out of the shadows and into a place he had long since abandoned. He knew she was more than just a stranger. She was a key, a guide leading him back to something he had lost or perhaps had never truly known. Each night, David's dreams filled with strange, fractured images, glimpses of Catherine's face interwoven with fragments of memories he couldn't quite place. He would wake in the early hours of the morning, his heart racing, his mind clouded with a mixture of longing and fear. It was as though his subconscious were trying to piece together a puzzle, one that hinted at secrets buried beneath the surface of his life, secrets he had neither the courage nor the clarity to uncover. Catherine's own dreams had begun to shift as well. She would dream of a man, his face always shadowed, standing at the edge of a dark, swirling river. The water was turbulent, threatening to sweep him away, yet he stood still, unwavering, his gaze fixed on something she couldn't see. She would wake with a strange sense of urgency, as though she were on the verge of a revelation, only to feel it slip away like water through her fingers. As the days grew shorter, both Catherine and David began to sense that they were on the cusp of something profound, a truth that lay just beyond the edge of their understanding. It was as if the universe itself were conspiring to bring them together, weaving their lives into a story neither could control nor predict. And with each passing day, the boundaries between their worlds grew thinner, the veils separating their pasts and futures slowly unraveling. One evening, Catherine found herself standing in front of an old, abandoned theater on the edge of town, its grand facade faded and worn, its windows dark and lifeless. The theater had once been a place of magic and wonder, a place where dreams came alive beneath the glittering lights and the thunderous applause of captivated audiences. But now, it stood empty, its once great halls silent, its beauty marred by time and neglect. She wasn't sure why she had come here, yet something about the theater drew her in, whispering to her of forgotten stories and hidden secrets. She pushed open the heavy wooden doors, their creak echoing through the empty space, and stepped inside. The air was thick with dust, the faint smell of old wood and fabric filling her senses as she walked slowly through the deserted lobby. Shadows flickered in the dim light, and she felt an eerie sense of familiarity, as though she had been here before, long ago, in another life. She wandered through the silent halls, her footsteps muffled by the worn carpet, her gaze drifting over the faded posters and the peeling walls. It was as if the theater itself were holding its breath, waiting for her to uncover something hidden within its depths. She found herself drawn to the main stage, the place where countless performers had once stood, their voices filling the cavernous space with song and story. As she stood on the stage, looking out at the empty seats, a strange sensation washed over her, a feeling of both peace and melancholy. She could almost hear the echoes of applause, the whispers of the audience, the faint strains of music lingering in the air. It was a place of memories, a place that held the ghosts of dreams and desires, and in that moment, she felt as though she were connected to something greater, something timeless and eternal. David, meanwhile, had found himself standing on a rooftop overlooking the city, his gaze fixed on the sprawling landscape below. The city lights stretched out before him, a tapestry of glittering colors and shadows, each light a tiny beacon of life amidst the darkness. He felt a sense of solitude, yet also a strange comfort, as though he were a part of the city's rhythm, a heartbeat pulsing in time with its own. He closed his eyes, letting the cold night air wash over him, and for a brief moment, he felt a flicker of clarity, a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. There was something here, a message hidden within the city's depths, waiting for him to uncover. He felt drawn to it, compelled to follow the pull of an invisible thread that led him closer to the answers he sought, answers that lay hidden beneath the surface of his own life. In the silence of that rooftop, he felt the presence of the woman he had met, her image clear in his mind, her gaze steady and unyielding. It was as if she were standing beside him, sharing in the quiet solitude of the city, her own heart beating in time with his. He could sense her, feel her warmth despite the distance between them, and he knew, without a doubt, that their lives were entwined, bound together by a force neither could escape. The night stretched on, filled with the quiet whispers of the city, the faint hum of traffic, the distant echoes of laughter and music. Catherine and David remained separated by streets and buildings, yet they were connected by something deeper, something that transcended time and space. They both felt it, a sense of anticipation, a feeling that they were on the verge of something monumental, a revelation that would change their lives forever. As dawn began to break, casting a pale light over the city, they both felt a sense of calm, a certainty that whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. They had each come to the edge of their own lives, standing at the precipice of their pasts, their fears, their regrets. And as the first rays of sunlight touched the city, illuminating the frozen landscape, they both took a step forward, embracing the mystery and the magic of the unknown. For beneath the surface of their lives, beneath the layers of ice and solitude, there was a fire waiting to be ignited, a love that had been hidden, waiting for this moment to be set free. Chapter 5. Echoes of What Once Was. Winter settled deeper over New York, its grip tightening as the city transformed under layers of frost and silence. Catherine and David continued to be two souls caught in the currents of fate, each unknowingly circling closer to the other, drawn by forces they couldn't name yet felt within their very bones. The fire that had been sparked within them grew brighter, a persistent warmth amidst the cold isolation of their lives, and it drove them both to explore depths of themselves they had long left unexamined. Catherine had begun to feel as though her own life was filled with shadows, hidden spaces she had ignored in her quest to keep moving forward, to keep herself protected from anything that could threaten her delicate balance. But ever since she'd encountered David on that snowy street corner, these shadows had begun to shift, taking on shapes and forms, whispering to her in the quiet moments of her days and the stillness of her nights. She felt a longing that she couldn't ignore, an ache for something she had never truly known yet desperately needed. As she moved through the routines of her life, she felt as though she were caught between two worlds, the tangible world of her responsibilities and duties, and a hidden realm just beneath the surface, a place where emotions and memories wove together in a tapestry of unspoken desires. Her thoughts would wander, drifting to that single encounter with David, the warmth of his gaze, the unyielding strength in his presence. And in those moments, the shadows around her seemed to stir, as though awakening to the pull of her heart. She began to notice signs, subtle hints that seemed to appear in the most unexpected places. A song playing softly in a cafe that reminded her of moments she had once cherished, a familiar scent in the air that evoked memories long buried. It was as though the universe were conspiring to remind her of everything she had lost and everything she still yearned for. The walls she had built around her heart felt fragile, as though a single touch might bring them crashing down, exposing her to a vulnerability she had long sought to avoid. David, too, found himself navigating a world that seemed both familiar and foreign, his own life filled with memories that felt more like dreams, each one holding a shadow of something he couldn't quite grasp. His days passed in a blur, a series of tasks and routines that left him feeling empty, disconnected from the person he had once been. Yet within him, there was a fire, a stubborn ember that refused to fade, a reminder of the warmth he had felt in Catherine's presence, the feeling of something real, something that transcended the shadows that had defined his life for so long. He found himself drawn to the places he had frequented in the past, seeking solace in the forgotten corners of the city, hoping to find a trace of her, a sign that would lead him back to that moment of connection. He walked the streets, his gaze scanning the faces of strangers, each one a potential link to the woman who had left such an indelible mark on his soul. And as he wandered, he felt the shadows within him stirring, as though they, too, were searching, longing to be brought into the light. One evening, as the city lay cloaked in a deep silence, Catherine found herself standing in front of a weathered brick building on the outskirts of the city. The building had an old-world charm, its walls covered in ivy, its windows framed with delicate ironwork. There was something about it that felt timeless, a place untouched by the rush of modern life, a hidden sanctuary where stories lingered in the air like secrets waiting to be told. She stepped inside, her footsteps echoing softly against the polished wooden floors. The interior was dimly lit, the only illumination coming from a series of lamps casting a warm, golden glow over the space. The walls were lined with bookshelves, each one filled with volumes that seemed to have been carefully chosen, their covers faded with age, their spines bearing the marks of countless readers. The scent of old paper and leather filled the air, a comforting reminder of worlds beyond her own, stories that existed in places she had never been and times she had never known. As she wandered through the quiet halls, she felt a strange sense of peace, a feeling of belonging that had eluded her for so long. She traced her fingers along the spines of the books, her touch light and reverent, as though she were communing with the past, the lives and stories that had been captured within these pages. There was something almost sacred about the experience, a moment of connection with something greater than herself, a reminder that she was part of a larger narrative, a story that stretched beyond the limits of her own life. David, on the other side of the city, found himself standing in an art gallery, his gaze drifting over the paintings that adorned the walls. The gallery was quiet, the air filled with a sense of reverence, as though the art itself held a power that demanded respect. He moved slowly from one piece to the next, each painting a window into a different world, a different life. There were landscapes of places he had never seen, portraits of faces he would never know. Yet he felt a connection to each one, a sense of familiarity that defied explanation. One painting, in particular, caught his attention. It was a simple scene, a woman standing alone in a field, her face turned toward the setting sun, her figure silhouetted against the fiery colors of the sky. There was a sadness in her stance, a loneliness that resonated deeply within him, and he felt as though he were looking at a reflection of his own soul, a mirror held up to the shadows that had defined his life. He stood there, transfixed, his heart heavy with the weight of unspoken emotions, and for a moment, he felt the shadows within him soften, as though they, too, were drawn to the light. The days continued to pass, each one bringing Catherine and David closer together, their lives moving in parallel, bound by a force neither could see nor understand. They moved through the city like shadows, their paths crossing unknowingly, their hearts carrying the weight of memories they couldn't recall. Yet despite the distance that separated them, they both felt the presence of the other, a quiet certainty that they were not alone, that their stories were connected in ways they had yet to discover. Catherine found herself standing on the rooftop of her building one evening, her gaze fixed on the city lights stretching out before her. The skyline shimmered in the darkness, a sea of lights that seemed to pulse with life, each one a beacon of hope, a reminder of the countless stories unfolding within the city's depths. She felt a sense of calm, a quiet acceptance of the unknown, a willingness to surrender to the mysteries that lay ahead. David, too, found himself looking out over the city from a different rooftop, his heart filled with a mixture of hope and fear. He felt as though he were standing at the edge of something vast and unknowable, a precipice that stretched beyond the limits of his own understanding. And as he gazed out at the city below, he felt a sense of clarity, a realization that he was ready to face the shadows within himself, to confront the parts of his life he had kept hidden for so long. In the silence of the night, they both stood alone, yet united by a bond that transcended the boundaries of time and space. They were two souls bound by a single thread, a connection that neither could sever nor deny. And as the city lay silent beneath the stars, they both felt a quiet resolve, a willingness to embrace the unspoken shadows of their lives, to uncover the secrets hidden within the depths of their own hearts. For in the end, they both knew that the shadows were not something to be feared. They were a part of them, a reflection of the lives they had lived, the choices they had made, and the stories they had yet to tell. And as they stood there, separated by miles yet connected by a single, unbreakable bond, they both felt a quiet certainty, a knowledge that they were no longer alone, that their paths would cross again, that their shadows would finally be brought into the light. Chapter 6. A Path Not Meant to Cross. The arrival of December brought with it a deeper chill, one that settled in the bones and made the city feel as though it were suspended in a breathless, frozen moment. Snow fell in flurries, blanketing New York in a pristine whiteness that hid the wear and tear of the city, transforming it into something almost surreal, like a picture on the other side of a frosted glass. Beneath this serene exterior, however, there was an undeniable intensity, a feeling that something was drawing near, that Catherine and David's lives were being pulled together by the force of unfulfilled destinies and choices long left behind. Catherine felt the weight of her past pressing against her with every step she took. The small decisions she had made over the years, the compromises, the moments of silence when she could have spoken her heart. All these choices had left her with an emptiness that she was only now beginning to recognize. The city, so familiar and filled with people she had come to know over the years, began to feel foreign, as though it were no longer a refuge, but rather a reminder of the life she had lived on the periphery of her own desires. As she moved through the snowy streets, memories rose within her like ghosts, unbidden yet impossible to ignore. She recalled moments from her past, moments that had seemed insignificant at the time but now held a profound resonance, as though they were clues to a larger truth she had yet to uncover. She remembered the night she had chosen to stay in the city rather than follow her heart to new places, the friendships she had let slip away, the dreams she had quietly put to rest in favor of safety and predictability. One afternoon, she wandered into an old cafe, a place she hadn't visited in years, yet felt inexplicably drawn to. It was nearly empty, the tables covered in a thin layer of dust, the air thick with the scent of coffee and faded memories. She settled into a booth by the window, her gaze drifting to the street outside, where snow fell softly, blanketing the world in a quiet calm. As she sat there, a sense of longing washed over her, a yearning for something she couldn't quite name, something that felt as distant as a forgotten dream yet as close as her own heartbeat. David, too, found himself haunted by the choices he had made, the life he had built on a foundation of missed opportunities and silent regrets. He had always prided himself on his independence, his ability to remain detached from the entanglements of emotion and connection. Yet now he found himself questioning everything he had believed. He felt as though he were standing on the edge of a precipice, looking back at a life that had once seemed solid, only to realize that it had been built on shifting sands, on the choices he had made to avoid pain rather than to embrace joy. As he walked the familiar streets, memories surfaced unbidden, fragments of a life he had long tried to forget. He remembered the woman he had once loved, the promises they had made to each other, the dreams they had shared. He had let her go, choosing the safety of solitude over the vulnerability of love. a choice he had never regretted until now. He wondered what his life might have been like if he had taken a different path, if he had allowed himself to feel, to connect, to risk the heartbreak that came with true intimacy. The city around him seemed to echo his thoughts, the tall buildings looming like silent witnesses to the choices he had made. The snow-covered streets a reminder of the quiet solitude that had defined his life. He felt an ache within him, a hollow emptiness that he had once mistaken for strength, yet now recognized as a void, a space he had created by pushing away anyone who dared to come too close. And in that emptiness, he felt a flicker of longing, a desire to change, to break free from the shadows of his past and embrace a future that held the promise of connection, of love. One evening, David found himself wandering through an old bookstore, a place he had often visited in his youth, back when he had still believed in the magic of stories and the power of words to heal and transform. The bookstore was nearly empty, its shelves lined with dusty volumes, each one a portal to a different world, a different life. He walked slowly through the aisles, his gaze drifting over the titles, his fingers brushing against the worn spines of the books. As he moved deeper into the store, he felt a strange sense of calm, a peace that he hadn't felt in years. The quiet atmosphere, the scent of old paper and leather, the soft glow of the lights, all of it felt comforting, as though he were stepping into a sanctuary, a place where he could leave behind the weight of his past and begin anew. He found himself drawn to a particular section of the store, a corner filled with poetry and philosophy, with books that spoke of love and loss, of dreams and despair. He reached for a volume of poetry, its cover faded and worn, the pages delicate with age. As he opened the book, his gaze fell upon a line that resonated deeply within him, a line that seemed to capture the essence of his own heart, his own longing. He read the words slowly, letting them sink into his soul, feeling as though they were speaking directly to him, as though they were a message from some higher power, a reminder of the path he had yet to take. Catherine, meanwhile, had found herself drawn to another part of the city, an art gallery she hadn't visited in years yet felt compelled to explore. The gallery was quiet, the walls adorned with paintings that captured the essence of life in all its beauty and pain, its joy and sorrow. She moved slowly through the rooms, her gaze drifting over the artworks, each one a window into a different world, a different life. One painting, in particular, caught her attention, a portrait of a woman standing alone in a field, her gaze fixed on the horizon, her expression a mixture of hope and sadness. Catherine felt a connection to the woman in the painting, a sense of kinship that went beyond words. She recognized the look in the woman's eyes, the quiet resilience, the strength that came from enduring life's trials, yet refusing to give up hope. As she stood there, lost in the painting, she felt a shift within her, a realization that her life was not defined by the choices she had made in the past, but rather by the choices she had yet to make. She felt a sense of freedom, a lightness that she hadn't felt in years, as though a weight had been lifted from her shoulders, allowing her to breathe, to dream, to hope. The days continued to pass, each one bringing Catherine and David closer to a moment that would change their lives forever. They moved through the city like shadows, their paths crossing unknowingly, their lives intertwined by a force neither could see nor understand. Yet despite the distance that separated them, they both felt a presence, a quiet certainty that they were not alone, that their stories were connected in ways they had yet to discover. As winter deepened and the city lay silent beneath a blanket of snow, they both felt a growing anticipation, a sense that they were on the brink of something monumental, something that would force them to confront the shadows of their pasts and embrace the possibilities of their futures. They knew, in their hearts, that they were no longer the same people they had once been, that they had changed in ways they could not yet fully comprehend. For beneath the surface of their lives, beneath the layers of regret and solitude, there was a spark waiting to be ignited, a love that had been hidden for far too long, waiting for this moment to be set free. Chapter 7. Through the lens of deception. In the hushed quiet of mid-December, the city seemed to hold its breath. The snowfall thickened, casting New York in a ghostly white veil, the streets stretching like rivers frozen in time. Beneath this frozen facade, a force was at work, a silent undercurrent tugging Catherine and David toward each other as though the city itself were a vast, invisible web, spun with threads of unseen connection and inexplicable purpose. For Catherine, the season took on a strange, almost hypnotic quality. The world felt different, as though every moment carried a weight she could not define, a significance that evaded her grasp yet hovered persistently in the air around her. She moved through her days with an increased sensitivity, noticing small details that would have once slipped by her unnoticed. The flicker of a street lamp against the early evening sky, the smell of wood smoke mingling with the crisp, icy air. These simple things felt infused with meaning, as though they held answers to questions she hadn't yet thought to ask. There was something particularly enchanting about the evenings, when the sky turned to shades of indigo and violet, and the lights of the city shimmered like stars come to rest on earth. She often found herself pausing to gaze out over the cityscape from her apartment window, feeling the cold glass beneath her fingers as her thoughts drifted to an unknown future. She could sense that something was waiting just beyond the horizon, a change that would break through the silence of her life and transform her in ways she could not yet comprehend. David, too, felt the pull of something beyond himself, a feeling that gnawed at the edges of his awareness, whispering to him in moments of solitude. He had always been a man grounded in the present, focused on his responsibilities and goals, but recently, he found himself haunted by a restlessness that kept him awake in the dead of night. He would lie in the dark, staring up at the ceiling, feeling the weight of the city pressing in around him, a silent chorus of stories and dreams that seemed to echo through his mind. He began to take long walks through the city after work, winding his way through the quiet streets, his breath forming small clouds that dissipated into the icy air. Each step felt like a step toward something he couldn't name, a destination he couldn't yet see but felt pulling him forward. The city was his companion, a vast, pulsing entity that mirrored the turmoil within him, its towering skyscrapers and silent alleys filled with a million lives, each one carrying its own dreams, its own heartaches. One evening, as the snow fell softly around him, he wandered into Central Park, his footsteps crunching against the freshly fallen snow. The park was nearly empty, a frozen landscape that felt both timeless and ephemeral, as though it existed in a world separate from the bustling city beyond. The trees stood like silent sentinels, their branches heavy with snow, their shadows stretching across the ground in long, dark lines that reminded him of the choices he had made, the moments he had let slip away. He found himself drawn to a small, frozen pond, its surface glistening under the faint glow of a nearby street lamp. He stood at the edge of the pond, his gaze drifting over the glassy surface, feeling a profound stillness settle within him. In that moment, he felt as though he were standing at the edge of his own life, gazing into a future that remained hidden from view, a future that held both the promise of redemption and the risk of heartbreak. Catherine, on the other side of the city, found herself drawn to a small art exhibit tucked away in a quiet corner of Soho. She had heard about the exhibit from a colleague, and though she wasn't typically one to venture out to such events, something about it had caught her attention. The gallery was intimate, its walls adorned with paintings that captured the beauty and complexity of human emotion, each brushstroke a testament to the artist's understanding of love, loss, and hope. As she moved through the gallery, her gaze lingered on a particular painting, a scene of a lone figure standing at the edge of a vast, open field, the sky overhead filled with dark, swirling clouds. There was a power in the image, a raw intensity that resonated with her own heart, her own unspoken fears and desires. She felt a connection to the figure in the painting, a kinship that went beyond words, as though the painting were a mirror reflecting her own soul. In that moment, she felt a shift within her, a recognition of the longing she had carried for so long, a yearning for connection, for a love that would break through the silence of her life and bring warmth to the shadows that lingered within her. She realized that she was no longer content to live in the background, to remain a silent observer in her own story. She wanted to be seen, to be known, to be loved for who she truly was, not just the mask she presented to the world. As the days passed, both Catherine and David continued to feel the pull of something greater, a force that seemed to guide their steps, drawing them ever closer to a moment of convergence, a moment that would alter the course of their lives. They moved through the city like two stars orbiting the same center, their paths circling closer with each passing day, each one carrying the weight of their own histories, their own silent dreams. One cold December evening, Catherine found herself standing on a rooftop overlooking the city, the lights stretching out before her like a sea of stars. She felt a sense of calm wash over her, a quiet acceptance of the unknown, a willingness to surrender to whatever fate had in store for her. She closed her eyes, breathing in the crisp night air, feeling the weight of her past begin to lift, replaced by a lightness she hadn't felt in years. David, standing on a different rooftop, felt a similar sense of peace, a feeling that he was exactly where he needed to be, that his life was finally aligning with something greater than himself. He looked out over the city, his heart filled with a quiet hope, a belief that he was no longer alone, that his story was part of a larger narrative, a story that would lead him to the love he had always longed for but had never believed he deserved. In the stillness of the night, as the city lay beneath a blanket of snow, they both felt a quiet certainty, a knowledge that their paths would soon cross, that their lives were bound by an unbreakable thread, a connection that transcended time and distance. They were no longer strangers, no longer two separate souls moving through the world alone. They were part of the same story, a story that had been waiting to be told, a story of love and redemption, of hope and second chances. And as the city slumbered beneath the stars, they both felt the silent pull of fate, a force that would bring them together, that would break through the shadows of their pasts and lead them to the light of a new beginning. Chapter 8: Unwritten Wounds. As the holiday season unfolded in all its glittering glory, the city of New York transformed into a veritable wonderland. Streets adorned with twinkling lights and festive decorations created an atmosphere charged with anticipation and excitement. Shop windows displayed extravagant displays, showcasing gifts and delicacies that tempted passers-by. In the heart of this vibrant setting, Catherine and David found themselves on the brink of discovery, their lives poised to intersect in a moment that would change everything. Catherine moved through the bustling streets, a warm scarf wrapped around her neck as she marveled at the festive spirit enveloping the city. Each store she passed emitted laughter and chatter, the joyful sounds mingling with the crisp winter air. Yet, beneath her outward appreciation of the holiday cheer, there was a quiet longing in her heart, a desire for connection that gnawed at her with increasing urgency. She had made peace with her past choices, yet she still felt the ache of loneliness and the weight of unexpressed dreams. That evening, she decided to attend a local winter festival held in a nearby park, drawn by the promise of community and celebration. As she arrived, she was greeted by the sight of families gathering around bonfires, laughter and warmth spilling into the cold night. Children dashed around, their cheeks flushed with excitement, their laughter echoing against the backdrop of softly falling snow. The scene was enchanting, yet Catherine felt an undeniable disconnect, as though she were an observer rather than a participant in the joyous atmosphere. As she wandered through the festival, her gaze fell upon a small booth adorned with colorful ornaments and handmade crafts. Each piece seemed to tell a story, crafted with care and attention to detail. Drawn to a particularly striking ornament, a delicate glass star, Catherine reached out to touch it, feeling its cool surface beneath her fingertips. In that moment, she closed her eyes, imagining a life filled with the warmth of love and connection. A life where she could share her dreams with someone who understood her. Meanwhile, across the city, David was navigating the same streets, feeling the pulse of the city quickening around him. He had decided to attend the same winter festival, hoping to shake off the restlessness that had haunted him for weeks. As he stepped into the park, he was enveloped by the sounds of laughter and the aroma of roasted chestnuts wafting through the air. Yet, even amidst the festive energy, he felt a lingering sense of solitude, a yearning for something deeper that he had yet to grasp. David wandered through the festival, taking in the sights and sounds, but as he passed by the booths filled with crafts and handmade gifts, he felt a strange sense of purpose drawing him forward. It was as though an invisible thread was pulling him towards something, or someone, that he could not yet see. His heart raced with anticipation, each heartbeat resonating with a desire to break free from the confines of his own solitude. As Catherine turned from the booth, ornament in hand, she caught sight of a figure moving through the crowd, a man whose presence seemed to radiate a warmth that contrasted with the chill in the air. David had paused at a nearby booth, examining a hand-painted ornament that caught his eye. Their eyes met across the throng of people, and in that fleeting moment, a spark ignited, sending a jolt of recognition through both of them. Catherine's breath caught in her throat as she felt an overwhelming sense of familiarity wash over her. She didn't know this man, yet there was something about him that felt profoundly known, as if their paths had crossed before in another time or place. David, too, felt a rush of emotions as he locked eyes with Catherine, an inexplicable connection igniting within him, a sense of belonging that had eluded him for so long. Yet, as quickly as their eyes met, the moment dissolved, swallowed by the tide of festival-goers moving past them. Catherine felt an impulse to step forward, to bridge the distance that had suddenly opened between them, but uncertainty held her back. What would she say? Would he remember her? Or was this fleeting moment simply a figment of her imagination? As she stood there, the glass star ornament forgotten in her hand, the noise of the festival faded into the background, and all she could focus on was the warmth radiating from that brief connection. Her heart raced, and the world around her blurred as she fought to suppress the fear of rejection and vulnerability that threatened to consume her. David, equally conflicted, felt a wave of determination rise within him. He knew he could not let this moment pass. Something about Catherine called to him, a silent promise of possibility that resonated deep within his soul. He took a deep breath, gathering his resolve as he began to move through the crowd toward her. The park was alive with festive energy, yet time seemed to slow as they moved closer, each step feeling both exhilarating and terrifying. Around them, laughter rang out, children played, and couples shared sweet moments beneath the glow of string lights. But for Catherine and David, the world had narrowed down to just the two of them, the atmosphere charged with an electric anticipation that hung in the air like snowflakes waiting to fall. Finally, they stood face to face, the noise of the festival fading into a distant hum. In that moment, nothing else mattered. The past, the doubts, the choices they had made. It all fell away, leaving only the essence of the connection that pulsed between them. Catherine searched David's eyes for answers, and he gazed back, feeling as though he were looking into a mirror, seeing his own unspoken desires reflected back at him. Yet, just as quickly as the moment blossomed, a sudden commotion erupted nearby. A group of children, caught up in the excitement of the festival, rushed past them, knocking into David and sending his hand-painted ornament tumbling to the ground, shattering into 1,000 pieces. The sound echoed like a gunshot, shattering the fragile bubble of connection they had built in those few precious moments. Catherine's heart sank as she watched the chaos unfold, her initial excitement replaced by uncertainty. The warmth that had ignited between them flickered, overshadowed by the abrupt reality of the moment. David knelt to pick up the remnants of his shattered ornament, feeling a pang of disappointment wash over him as he realized how quickly their connection had been disrupted. As he gathered the broken pieces, Catherine felt an overwhelming urge to comfort him, to bridge the distance that had suddenly re-emerged between them. She knelt beside him, their shoulders brushing against one another, a moment of intimacy rekindling the spark they had felt just moments before. In the stillness that followed, as they both reached for the same piece of the ornament, their fingers brushed, igniting a wave of electricity that coursed through them. They paused, hearts racing, locked in a gaze that spoke of unexpressed emotions and unfulfilled desires. Though the moment was fragile, it was enough to reignite the hope that had blossomed between them. It was a silent understanding that life was unpredictable, that love often required patience and resilience to flourish amidst chaos. They both sensed that this encounter, however fleeting, was merely the beginning of something extraordinary, a connection that transcended the barriers of their pasts. As the festival continued around them, Catherine and David remained kneeling in the snow, two souls entwined by fate, silently vowing to embrace the possibilities that lay ahead. With the city sparkling in the background, they stood up, resolute in the knowledge that their paths had finally intersected, that they were no longer alone in their journey. The night deepened, and the stars shimmered above, mirroring the hope that ignited within them both. With unspoken words and shared glances, they took their first steps toward a new beginning, ready to face the uncertainties ahead, together. Chapter 9. The Breaking Point. In the days that followed their fateful encounter at the Winter Festival, Catherine and David found themselves unable to shake the memory of that fleeting moment. The atmosphere around them shifted, charged with a newfound energy that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Each day brought a blend of anticipation and uncertainty, as if the universe had whispered promises of connection that lingered in the air, waiting for them to grasp hold. Catherine resumed her routine, her days filled with work and the humdrum of life. Yet, the mundane felt different now, tinted with the colors of possibility. The familiar streets of her neighborhood seemed to pulse with life, as though the world itself recognized the change within her. Each encounter with friends and colleagues felt imbued with significance, and she found herself sharing her thoughts more openly, engaging in conversations that were deeper than the surface-level chatter she had previously settled for. But even amid the vibrant energy of the city, the weight of uncertainty pressed upon her. The unspoken connection with David loomed large in her mind, a promise of something profound that she yearned to explore. Yet, the fear of vulnerability gnawed at her, whispering doubts that made her question whether she was ready to open her heart once more. What if their moment had been nothing more than a fleeting coincidence? What if David, with his intense gaze and gentle spirit, was merely a chapter in a book that had long since closed? David, too, felt the impact of their brief encounter. The memory of Catherine lingered in his thoughts, infusing his days with a sense of longing he hadn't anticipated. He went about his routines with a new awareness, the world around him suddenly rich with colors and textures he had previously overlooked. The cold winter air felt sharper, the sounds of the city resonated deeper, and he found himself noticing the little details that had once slipped by unnoticed. Yet, he was haunted by a sense of urgency, as if time were slipping through his fingers like sand, pushing him to act before the moment faded into memory. Each morning, he awoke with the resolve to reach out to Catherine, to explore the connection that had ignited so unexpectedly between them. But as the hours stretched into days, the weight of hesitation gripped him. He worried that taking the first step might unravel the delicate thread that had woven itself between them, exposing their vulnerabilities to the cold reality of life. The holiday season rolled on, and as the city became more alive with celebration, Catherine and David found themselves moving through the same spaces yet remaining tantalizingly apart. Their paths crossed in the streets, often just a few feet away from one another, but an invisible barrier seemed to exist, a wall built of unspoken words and fears that held them at bay. Catherine would catch glimpses of David, his figure illuminated by the glow of holiday lights, and her heart would race with the familiar thrill of recognition, yet she would remain frozen, trapped in a moment of indecision. The longer they remained apart, the more their connection took on an almost mythical quality in their minds. Each day, they crafted narratives around their encounter, replaying it over and over in their thoughts. Catherine imagined David's laughter, how it would sound echoing through her apartment, while David envisioned the way her eyes sparkled under the city lights, a beacon in the sea of faces surrounding them. The more they imagined, the more the possibility of what could be swelled within them, creating a longing that was almost palpable. As Christmas approached, the city was draped in festive decor, and the air was thick with the scent of pine and cinnamon. Stores overflowed with shoppers, and the laughter of children filled the parks as families came together to celebrate. Yet, amidst the joyous chaos, a profound sense of loneliness settled over Catherine. The weight of her longing for connection pressed down on her like a heavy blanket, leaving her feeling isolated even in the midst of celebration. One evening, she found herself wandering through Central Park, drawn by the allure of the snowy landscape that lay untouched beneath the soft glow of street lamps. The trees, bare and skeletal, stood like silent witnesses to her thoughts, their branches heavy with glistening snow. She walked along the path, her footsteps crunching softly against the snow, lost in the echoes of her own heart. As she paused to admire the peaceful scene around her, a gust of wind swept through the park, sending a flurry of snowflakes swirling into the air. She closed her eyes and let the chill embrace her, feeling a rush of emotions swell within her: hope, longing, and a fear of the unknown that threatened to overwhelm her. In that moment, she realized how deeply she craved a connection, a love that could fill the void that had lingered in her heart for so long. Meanwhile, David was also wandering through the city, feeling a restless energy propel him forward. He had tried to distract himself with work and friends, yet the thought of Catherine clung to him like a shadow. He found himself back at Central Park, drawn to the same spot where their paths had nearly crossed during the festival. The landscape was serene, the world hushed under a blanket of snow, yet his heart raced as he remembered the magic of that moment. David walked along the path, feeling the chill of the air sting his cheeks, but he didn't mind. He welcomed the sensation, using it to ground himself as he wrestled with his thoughts. He knew he couldn't let fear dictate his choices any longer. The connection he felt with Catherine was too powerful to ignore, and he had to find a way to reach out, to break through the barrier that had kept them apart. Just as the city began to glow with the soft hues of twilight, David stopped by a small pond nestled among the trees, its surface shimmering like glass. He gazed into the depths, the reflection of the world around him twisting and distorting, mirroring the turmoil within him. He longed for clarity, a sign that his feelings were valid, that the connection he felt was worth pursuing. With a sudden surge of determination, he took a deep breath and made a decision. He would find Catherine, no matter how difficult it might be. He could no longer let the threads of fate unravel before him. He had to act, to weave the tapestry of their story together before it slipped away completely. As the stars began to twinkle overhead, casting a soft light over the park, Catherine continued her solitary walk, her heart heavy with unexpressed emotions. She felt an inexplicable sense of longing, as if the universe was urging her to take a leap of faith, to reach out for the connection that felt just within her grasp. The cold air wrapped around her, almost like a reminder of the warmth she sought, a reminder that she was not alone. With each step, she felt the weight of her fears begin to lift, replaced by a flicker of hope. Maybe it was time to let go of her apprehensions, to embrace the possibility of what lay ahead. Just as she was about to turn away from the pond, a sudden rustle in the bushes caught her attention, and she paused, a sense of anticipation gripping her heart. In that moment, Catherine and David were both at a crossroads, each poised to make a decision that would alter the course of their lives. The universe, with its intricate design of fate and destiny, had woven their paths together, and it was now up to them to untangle the threads of uncertainty and step boldly into the unknown. The air crackled with energy, the promise of connection hovering just out of reach, waiting for them to take the plunge into the depths of their own hearts. As the stars blinked above, each one a silent witness to their journey, the world around them faded away, leaving only the possibility of love that awaited them both. Chapter 10. Sins of the Heart. The winter nights in New York carried with them a deep, still quiet, as if the city itself was holding its breath in anticipation of the magic of the season. Each evening, as the stars blinked into existence one by one, the lights adorning the city seemed to sparkle with a renewed intensity, casting a warm glow that wrapped the streets in a cozy embrace. Yet, beneath the surface of this festive exterior, a tension lingered in the air, a collective yearning for connection that pulsed with life, drawing lonely hearts together like moths to a flame. Catherine's heart raced as she stood by the pond, feeling the weight of indecision pressing heavily upon her. The world around her felt vibrant, alive with the energy of celebration, yet she felt like a solitary figure amidst the festivities. The memories of her encounter with David surged through her mind, igniting a flicker of hope that battled against the fears that had kept her anchored in solitude. As the wind rustled through the trees, a voice deep within her urged her to act, to take a step forward into the unknown. What was it that held her back? Was it the fear of vulnerability? The uncertainty of whether David felt the same way? Or perhaps it was the apprehension that this connection, so fragile and beautiful, could shatter at any moment. Catherine closed her eyes, allowing the cool breeze to wash over her. In that fleeting moment, she envisioned a life filled with love, laughter, and shared dreams. A life where she could embrace her deepest desires without fear of rejection. The vision felt intoxicating, pulling her closer to the edge of a decision she had long hesitated to make. What if the only thing standing between her and that life was the courage to leap into the unknown? At the same time, David stood at the threshold of a decision of his own, the weight of the moment pressing down on him like a heavy cloak. The air around him felt charged with anticipation, each breath filled with a mix of excitement and dread. He had come to the park seeking clarity, but instead, he found himself engulfed in a whirlwind of emotions that had left him feeling both invigorated and overwhelmed. He glanced around, taking in the sights of the winter wonderland that enveloped him. The laughter of children echoed in the distance, mingling with the soft sounds of holiday music drifting through the air. The festive spirit of the season was palpable, yet it contrasted sharply with the tumult within him. David knew that he had to seize the moment before it slipped away, before the possibility of a connection with Catherine faded into mere memory. Drawing a deep breath, he steeled himself for what lay ahead. The fear of rejection whispered in the corners of his mind, but he pushed it aside, fueled by a desire that felt primal and urgent. He couldn't allow himself to retreat into the shadows of doubt any longer. It was time to take that leap, to risk it all for the chance of something beautiful. As if the universe conspired to guide him, David found his feet moving of their own accord, leading him toward the path that wound around the pond. Each step felt heavier than the last, but he pressed on, determined to reach Catherine before she vanished into the night. The winter air bit at his skin, invigorating his senses and igniting a sense of purpose within him. He knew that this was the moment he had been waiting for, the moment that could define the rest of their lives. Catherine felt a shift in the air, a sudden tension that pulled her attention away from her introspection. She turned to the side, her heart leaping as she caught sight of David approaching. He moved with an urgency that mirrored the pounding of her heart, each step a silent declaration of intent. Their eyes locked, and for a heartbeat, the world around them dissolved into nothingness, leaving only the two of them standing on the precipice of change. David's breath caught in his throat as he drew nearer. The soft glow of the streetlights illuminated Catherine's face, highlighting the way her eyes sparkled with a mix of wonder and uncertainty. He felt a rush of emotions wash over him: excitement, fear, hope, all colliding in a symphony that resonated deep within his soul. This was it, the moment he had yearned for, and yet it filled him with a sense of both exhilaration and trepidation. As he reached her side, time seemed to stand still. They stood together, two souls drawn together by fate, their hearts beating in synchrony. The air crackled with unspoken words, the weight of their shared longing hanging between them like a delicate thread, waiting to be woven into something more profound. Catherine took a step closer, the warmth radiating from David enveloping her like a soft blanket. The fears that had once held her captive began to dissolve in the face of the undeniable connection they shared. In that moment, she felt the courage swell within her, a determination to embrace the unknown and open her heart to the possibilities that lay ahead. David, too, felt the weight of his fears begin to lift as he stood beside her. He knew that they were on the brink of something extraordinary, a journey that would take them both beyond the boundaries of their pasts and into the realm of shared dreams and love. He reached out, his hand brushing against hers, a tentative yet electrifying gesture that sent a ripple of warmth through them both. In the midst of the winter night, with the stars shimmering above, Catherine and David stood united, two hearts daring to leap into the unknown together. They had both faced their demons, wrestled with their doubts, and emerged on the other side, ready to embrace the journey that awaited them. As they stood by the pond, the reflection of the moon casting a soft glow on the water, they made an unspoken pact to explore the connection that had ignited so unexpectedly between them. In that sacred moment, the fear that had once held them captive transformed into a sense of freedom, a liberation that came from choosing love over fear, connection over isolation. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with challenges and joys yet to be discovered, but they were ready to embrace it together. Each heartbeat echoed with the promise of new beginnings, of shared adventures that would weave their lives into a tapestry of experiences, emotions, and memories. With renewed determination, Catherine and David took their first steps into the unknown, hand in hand, ready to write their story, one filled with the warmth of love and the courage to leap into the depths of their hearts. The winter night enveloped them, a witness to the birth of a new chapter in their lives, one that promised to be rich with connection, understanding, and the transformative power of love. Chapter 11. Into the Depths of Regret. As the winter solstice approached, the city of New York transformed into a sparkling wonderland, its streets adorned with twinkling lights and festive decorations that captured the spirit of the season. The air hummed with excitement, filled with the laughter of children and the cheerful sounds of holiday music drifting from storefronts. Amidst the joy and celebration, Catherine and David embarked on a journey that promised to deepen their connection, one that would challenge them to grow in ways they had yet to imagine. The days following their moment by the pond unfolded like the pages of a cherished book, filled with moments of shared laughter and newfound intimacy. They discovered the simple joys of each other's company, exploring cozy cafes, wandering through bustling holiday markets, and exchanging stories of their lives. Each outing was an adventure, a dance of discovery that unveiled layers of their personalities, hopes, and dreams. Catherine reveled in the warmth of David's presence, the way his laughter could light up the darkest corners of her heart. He had an effortless way of making her feel seen and cherished, and each smile exchanged between them was a testament to the bond they were forging. David, too, felt a sense of peace settle within him when he was with Catherine. The shadows of his past began to fade, replaced by the bright promise of a future he dared to envision. One evening, as they strolled hand in hand through the bustling streets of Manhattan, they found themselves swept up in the magic of the season. The lights strung across the trees twinkled like stars, and the soft glow of the storefronts created a warm cocoon around them. The air was filled with the scent of roasted chestnuts and cinnamon, wrapping them in a sensory embrace that felt both familiar and exhilarating. Catherine paused in front of a quaint shop, its windows adorned with a myriad of ornaments and trinkets that sparkled in the light. Intrigued, she pulled David closer, her eyes wide with wonder as she pointed out the delicate glass figurines that caught her fancy. David watched her with a smile, captivated by the joy radiating from her. In that moment, he understood that it was the little things, the shared laughter over trivialities, and the quiet moments of connection that forged the strongest bonds. Inside the shop, they wandered among the treasures, each item a reminder of the memories they could create together. Catherine picked up a small ornament, its surface shimmering with iridescent colors. As she held it up to the light, she imagined hanging it on a tree in a cozy home, each ornament representing a story of love and laughter shared over the years. The thought warmed her heart, a gentle reminder that the future held limitless possibilities. David, feeling the pull of her daydreams, joined her in exploring the treasures of the shop. He spotted a handcrafted snow globe, its tiny scene capturing the essence of winter. A small cabin nestled among pine trees, with a family gathered around a fire. He could almost hear the crackle of the flames, envisioning a future filled with warmth and togetherness. He turned to Catherine, his heart swelling with a longing to create those moments with her, to build a life that sparkled with love and laughter. As they exited the shop, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of pink and orange. The city lights flickered to life, illuminating the streets with a soft glow that felt almost magical. Catherine and David continued to walk, their fingers intertwined, hearts beating in rhythm as they navigated the sea of holiday revelers. In the heart of Central Park, they stumbled upon an outdoor ice skating rink, alive with the laughter of skaters gliding across the ice. The scene was vibrant, the air filled with joy as families and friends celebrated the spirit of the season. A spontaneous idea struck David, and with a playful grin, he suggested they join in the fun. Catherine's eyes sparkled with excitement as they donned their skates, laughter spilling from their lips as they stumbled onto the ice. It was a dance of awkwardness and joy, their movements uncoordinated yet filled with a shared thrill. They fell and laughed, each mishap only bringing them closer together, their hearts light with the carefree spirit of youth. As they skated, David caught a glimpse of the joy radiating from Catherine, the way her cheeks flushed with laughter, the sparkle in her eyes. It was a reminder of how alive they felt in each other's presence. In that moment, he realized that love was not just about grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It was found in the shared experiences, the simple moments that knitted their lives together. As the evening wore on, the stars twinkled overhead, casting a magical glow on the ice. The music played softly in the background, a melodic accompaniment to their joyful dance. Catherine took a deep breath, the cold air filling her lungs, invigorating her spirit. She was living in the moment, savoring the exhilaration of the experience, and for the first time in a long while, she felt truly free. But as they continued to skate, a sudden wave of vulnerability washed over her. Beneath the laughter and joy, a flicker of doubt crept in. What if this moment was fleeting? What if the magic of the season was just an illusion, destined to fade as reality set back in? Catherine brushed the thought aside, determined to hold onto the happiness she had found with David. Yet the fear lingered in the recesses of her mind, a whisper of uncertainty that threatened to overshadow the joy of their newfound connection. Meanwhile, David was acutely aware of the delicate balance they were navigating. He felt the weight of his own uncertainties. Though he was swept away in the joy of the moment, the shadows of his past began to stir, reminding him of the wounds he had carried for so long. He had a history of heartbreak, and the fear of it repeating itself loomed large in his mind. Yet, looking into Catherine's eyes, he found a flicker of hope, a promise that perhaps this time could be different. As the music swelled, they found themselves drawn closer together, the world around them fading into a blur of colors and sounds. In that moment, David took a chance, wrapping his arms around Catherine, guiding her into a gentle spin. Laughter erupted between them, the sound mingling with the music and the joy of the night. They danced on the ice, two souls intertwined, finding solace in the rhythm of their shared movements. Time seemed to stretch as they lost themselves in the dance, the worries and fears that had once haunted them dissipating like the morning mist. With each spin, each laugh, they embraced the present moment, creating a memory that would linger long after the holiday lights faded. As the evening drew to a close, Catherine and David reluctantly stepped off the ice, their hearts still racing with the exhilaration of the experience. They stood hand in hand, the chill of the winter night contrasting with the warmth blossoming within them. The city around them pulsed with life, a vibrant backdrop to the budding romance that had taken root in their hearts. As they walked back through the park, the sounds of the city filled the air, the distant laughter, the rustle of leaves in the wind, the soft hum of holiday music. With each step, they felt the foundations of their connection grow stronger, the unspoken promise of a future filled with love and adventure looming ever closer. In that magical night, as they strolled through the illuminated streets, both Catherine and David felt a shift within themselves. They were no longer just two individuals wandering through life. They were partners embarking on a journey together, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The fear that had once held them captive began to fade, replaced by a burgeoning sense of hope and courage. As they reached the edge of the park, the lights of the city twinkled like stars, a reminder of the endless possibilities that awaited them. Together, they had taken the first steps into a world where love blossomed and dreams became tangible. The dance of new beginnings had begun, and they were ready to embrace the journey ahead. Hand in hand, hearts entwined, and spirits soaring toward the horizon of their shared future. Chapter 12: Threads Unraveled. As winter deepened its embrace over New York, a stillness settled over the city. The days grew shorter, and the nights stretched into a tapestry of twinkling lights and muffled sounds. Catherine and David reveled in the warmth of their budding relationship, each moment spent together deepening the connection that had blossomed between them. But as the holiday season approached its climax, an unexpected storm brewed on the horizon, threatening to disrupt the delicate balance they had found. The week leading up to Christmas was filled with festive preparations, the streets bustling with shoppers, and the air saturated with the scent of pine and freshly baked goods. Each day felt like a gift wrapped in joy, a canvas of bright colors and shared laughter. They decorated a small tree in David's apartment, stringing it with lights and ornaments that sparkled like the stars above. They spent evenings curled up on the couch, sharing stories of their childhood traditions while sipping steaming cups of cocoa, their hearts entwined in the warmth of each other's presence. However, beneath the surface of their joy, unease began to creep in. David found himself haunted by shadows from his past, memories of a previous relationship that had left scars too deep to ignore. He had shared pieces of his life with Catherine, but the full weight of his history remained unspoken. The fear of vulnerability loomed large, and though he longed to open up, he found himself caught in a web of uncertainty. Catherine, too, sensed the change in the air. Though their moments together sparkled with joy, she could feel David's tension, the flicker of hesitation in his eyes. Her heart ached at the thought of him carrying the weight of unshared burdens, and she wanted nothing more than to help him release the fears that clung to him like shadows. Yet, she struggled with her own fears of inadequacy, questioning whether she could truly be the light he needed to guide him through the darkness. As Christmas approached, the city was enveloped in a blanket of snow, transforming the familiar streets into a magical landscape. The first snowfall brought with it a sense of wonder, the world outside glistening with fresh, untouched beauty. Catherine and David walked through the park, hand in hand, their breath visible in the cold air as they marveled at the winter wonderland surrounding them. The park was alive with families building snowmen, couples sharing laughter, and children gleefully sledding down the small hills. But as they strolled, David's mind was a tempest of thoughts, the clouds of his past swirling dangerously close. He watched Catherine, her cheeks flushed with excitement and her eyes sparkling like the snowflakes dancing in the air. She was a vision of joy, yet he felt an internal conflict raging within him. He wanted to share this moment with her fully, but the weight of his fears held him back, chaining him to an uncertainty that threatened to pull him away from the very happiness he had sought. That evening, as they returned to David's apartment, the atmosphere shifted. The cozy glow of the Christmas lights felt more subdued, the warmth of the cocoa they prepared less comforting. Catherine sensed the change in him, a heaviness that hung in the air, like a storm cloud waiting to break. She watched as David stared out the window, lost in thought, his expression a mix of longing and turmoil. Determined to bridge the gap between them, Catherine leaned against the counter, her heart racing with the desire to reach out to him. She wanted to pull him into her embrace, to reassure him that he could trust her with his fears, but the words caught in her throat. She had learned that love required not only courage but also a willingness to face the uncomfortable truths that lingered in the shadows. That night, as snow blanketed the city, a fierce storm swept in, bringing with it strong winds and a swirling chaos that mirrored the turmoil brewing within David. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows, and the atmosphere crackled with tension, as if the universe was echoing their internal struggles. In the heart of the storm, the walls began to close in, and the weight of unspoken truths grew heavier. As the evening wore on, David felt an overwhelming sense of dread settle over him. He had been trying so hard to protect himself, to shield his heart from the potential pain of losing Catherine. Yet, in doing so, he realized he was also building a wall between them, a barrier that threatened to keep them from the depth of connection they both yearned for. The memories of his past love, the betrayal, the heartache, pressed down on him like a suffocating blanket, and he feared that by opening up, he would only expose himself to further pain. Catherine watched as David wrestled with his thoughts, the storm outside mirroring the chaos within him. She felt a deep ache in her heart, knowing that he was battling demons that she couldn't see. She longed to understand, to offer him solace, but she also felt a growing sense of frustration at the unspoken words that hung between them. Determined to break through the storm, she decided to reach for him, to offer him the strength she knew he needed. She approached him slowly, her heart pounding in her chest, and placed a gentle hand on his arm, hoping to pull him back from the brink of despair. David turned to her, his expression softening as he felt the warmth of her touch seep into him, a balm for his troubled soul. In that moment, the wind howled louder, echoing their internal struggles, but Catherine held her ground, her presence a steadying force in the chaos. She didn't need to say anything. Her gaze alone conveyed the message of understanding and support. She was there for him, ready to stand by his side as he faced his fears. As the storm raged outside, David's heart began to crack open, the barriers he had built starting to crumble under the weight of Catherine's unwavering love. He took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of her support wrap around him like a protective cloak. In her presence, he felt the courage to confront the storm within himself. He turned to her, the turmoil in his heart giving way to a flicker of hope. It was time to confront the shadows that had haunted him for so long, to share the pieces of his past that he had kept hidden. He realized that by allowing Catherine into the depths of his heart, he wasn't just risking vulnerability. He was also inviting the possibility of healing and true connection. With a newfound determination, David moved closer to Catherine, his heart racing as he prepared to share the truth that had held him captive for too long. The storm outside continued to rage, but within the warmth of their shared space, he felt the stirring of clarity and resolve. It was time to weather the storm together, to embrace the chaos that life often brought and transform it into something beautiful. As the night wore on and the winds howled outside, Catherine and David stood together, ready to face the storm with open hearts. The journey ahead would not be without its challenges, but they had each other, a steadfast anchor amidst the turbulence of life. With courage as their guide, they were prepared to embrace the unknown, forging a path toward a future where love and understanding could flourish. Chapter 13. A Heart's Exodus. As the storm raged outside, a fierce wind howled through the streets of New York, rattling the windows of David's apartment and carrying with it a palpable sense of chaos. Inside, a different kind of storm was brewing, one of emotions long held at bay, ready to be unraveled and examined under the light of understanding. David stood before Catherine, the weight of his past heavy in the air between them, each moment stretching like the darkened skies outside. The warmth of the room felt like a sanctuary against the tempest outside, but David was acutely aware of the turmoil swirling in his heart. He had made the decision to open up, to share the pieces of himself that he had hidden away, fearing the vulnerability that came with such revelations. The flickering candles cast dancing shadows on the walls, creating an intimate ambience that felt both comforting and daunting. Catherine stood close, her presence steady and reassuring. She felt the tension radiating from David, the storm of emotions threatening to overwhelm him. Her heart swelled with a mixture of empathy and anticipation, knowing that this moment held the power to change the course of their relationship. They had built something beautiful together, but the foundation required honesty and vulnerability to truly flourish. As David began to share his story, he felt as if he were peeling away layers of protective armor, exposing the tender parts of himself that he had kept hidden. He spoke of a past relationship that had left him scarred, a love that had started with such promise but had ended in betrayal and heartbreak. The memories flooded back, a vivid tapestry of emotions that threatened to pull him under. He remembered the laughter, the shared dreams, the moments that had once felt so real, only to be shattered by deceit. Catherine listened intently, her heart aching as she absorbed his words. She could sense the pain etched into his memories, the remnants of a love that had turned sour. With each revelation, she felt her own heart break for him, wishing she could take away the hurt he had endured. She realized the weight of his past had forged the man standing before her, and she admired the strength it took to confront those memories. The storm outside intensified, wind howling like a wounded beast, but within the walls of the apartment, The air felt charged with a different energy, a potent mix of vulnerability and hope. David continued, his voice steady yet tinged with emotion, recounting the moments when trust had crumbled and the pain of betrayal had pierced his heart. Each word was a thread woven into the fabric of his being, revealing the raw edges of his soul. Catherine reached out, her fingers brushing against his hand, a silent gesture of solidarity and support. She understood that healing required not only acknowledgement of the pain, but also the courage to embrace the future. As David spoke, she imagined herself standing alongside him on the journey of healing, ready to help him weave new threads of hope into the tapestry of his life. He spoke of the walls he had built around his heart, the barriers erected to protect himself from the possibility of hurt. He had sworn off love, convinced that it was a fragile construct destined to crumble. Yet, as he looked into Catherine's eyes, he felt the cracks in those walls beginning to widen. She was not just a fleeting moment. She was a beacon of light, a promise of something real and profound. As he recounted the depths of his sorrow, David felt the burdens he had carried for so long begin to lift. Sharing his truth felt liberating, a cathartic release that washed over him like the cleansing rain outside. He spoke of the lessons learned, the growth that had come from the pain, and how it had shaped him into the man he was today. Yet, he also acknowledged the fear that lingered, the anxiety that clung to him like a shadow, reminding him of the hurt that could potentially lie ahead. Catherine's heart swelled with compassion as she listened, understanding that his past had not defined him but had instead forged a path to this moment. She wanted him to know that she was not here to break his heart. She was here to help him mend it. She felt a rush of love for him, a deep-seated yearning to be the light that guided him through the darkness of his past. As the storm raged on, David's voice softened, revealing the tender vulnerability that lay beneath his fears. He shared his dreams, the hopes he had once tucked away for fear of disappointment. He spoke of the life he envisioned, one filled with love, laughter, and shared adventures. Each word was a thread of hope, weaving a new narrative that embraced the possibilities of the future. In that intimate moment, something shifted between them. The air crackled with a newfound energy, a connection that transcended the pain of the past. David felt a sense of relief wash over him, a burden lifted as he recognized that he was not alone in this journey. Catherine was not just a passerby in his life. She was an active participant, ready to face the storms with him. The wind howled outside, but within the walls of the apartment, a different kind of storm was brewing, one of courage, hope, and unwavering love. The flickering candles illuminated their faces, casting a warm glow that mirrored the light blooming within their hearts. As David finished sharing his story, he felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for Catherine. She had shown him that vulnerability was not a weakness but a pathway to connection and healing. In that shared silence, Catherine stepped closer, wrapping her arms around him in a warm embrace. David melted into her, feeling the warmth of her love envelop him like a safety blanket. It was a moment of surrender, a testament to the strength they had found together. He realized that with Catherine by his side, he could face whatever storms life threw their way. As the wind continued to howl outside, David knew that they had weathered a significant moment in their journey together. They had confronted the past, allowing the unraveling threads to transform into something beautiful, a tapestry of love, resilience, and hope. With each shared story, they had woven a bond that could withstand the fiercest of storms. In the quiet aftermath of their conversation, a profound sense of calm settled over them. David understood that love was not just about the joyous moments, but also about the willingness to face the darkness together. He felt empowered to embrace the unknown, knowing that Catherine would be there to walk alongside him, hand in hand, heart to heart. As the storm outside began to wane, the clouds started to part, revealing glimpses of starlight shining through. David and Catherine stood together, their hearts open to the possibilities that lay ahead. With the past acknowledged and the future embraced, they were ready to embark on a journey filled with love, laughter, and the promise of new beginnings. Chapter 14. Fading in the Light. As the first light of dawn broke over the skyline of New York, the remnants of the storm began to fade, leaving behind a world transformed. The city, adorned with a fresh layer of glistening snow, shimmered under the soft glow of the rising sun. It was a sight that filled David and Catherine with a sense of renewal, a perfect metaphor for the new beginnings they had embraced in the wake of their heartfelt revelations. In the early morning stillness, David awoke to the warmth of Catherine beside him, her presence a comforting reminder of the night's catharsis. The candlelight from the previous evening had long since flickered out, but the glow of love and understanding lingered in the air. He turned to watch her sleep, her face illuminated by the gentle light filtering through the window. In that moment, he felt a deep sense of gratitude wash over him. A gratitude for her patience, her kindness, and the way she had opened her heart to him. With each passing second, the city outside stirred to life. The sound of snow crunching underfoot and the distant laughter of children filling the air. David knew that the world around them was waking up to the magic of a new day, and he felt the stirring within himself, a desire to embrace the possibilities that lay ahead. He gently rose from the bed, careful not to disturb Catherine, and made his way to the kitchen. The aroma of fresh coffee wafted through the apartment as he prepared a pot, the rich scent enveloping him like a warm hug. David took a moment to gaze out the window, the city's beauty mesmerizing him. The streets sparkled with the remnants of the storm, and he felt a renewed sense of hope for what the day would bring. It was as if the universe had conspired to cleanse away the burdens of the past, allowing room for new dreams to flourish. As he sipped his coffee, David reflected on the journey he and Catherine had taken thus far. The conversations that had unfolded, the emotions that had been shared, had forged an unbreakable bond between them. He recognized that love was not just about the happy moments. It was also about navigating the storms together, confronting the fears and vulnerabilities that threatened to keep them apart. In the warmth of their apartment, Catherine stirred, her eyes fluttering open to find David gazing thoughtfully out the window. A smile blossomed on her lips as she sat up, the sheets cascading around her like a gentle embrace. She could sense the change in the air, a tangible shift that filled her with anticipation for the day ahead. The revelations of the previous night had brought them closer, and she felt an unspoken understanding that they were on the brink of something beautiful. As she joined David in the kitchen, the morning light bathed them in a golden hue, illuminating the path they were embarking on together. They shared a comfortable silence, a quiet acknowledgement of the journey ahead. It was a moment free from expectations, where they could simply be together. David poured a cup of coffee for Catherine, his heart swelling with affection as he handed it to her. Their fingers brushed briefly, sending a rush of warmth between them. They settled onto the couch, wrapped in each other's presence, the quiet intimacy of the morning enveloping them like a soft blanket. The outside world felt distant and irrelevant. In that moment, all that mattered was the connection they had forged. As they sipped their coffee, Catherine's thoughts drifted to the days ahead. Christmas was just around the corner, and with it came the promise of joy and celebration. She envisioned the festivities they would share, the traditions they could create together, and the love that would surround them. The thought of spending the holiday season with David filled her heart with a warmth she had never known, a longing for a future rich with shared experiences. But as the day progressed, the specter of uncertainty loomed in the corners of her mind. While their bond felt stronger than ever, Catherine couldn't shake the feeling that the ghosts of the past still lingered in the shadows. She knew that David's journey to healing was far from over, and she silently vowed to support him in whatever way she could. Their love was a delicate tapestry, one that required care and attention to flourish. David, too, felt the weight of expectation. He wanted to be the man Catherine deserved, the partner who could stand by her side without the burdens of his past weighing him down. He understood that healing was not a linear process. It would require patience, effort, and a willingness to confront the lingering fears that threatened to disrupt their happiness. As the day unfolded, they ventured out into the snowy streets, the world sparkling around them like a fairy tale. The fresh snow crunched underfoot, and laughter filled the air as families embraced the joy of the season. Children bundled up in colorful scarves and hats engaged in friendly snowball fights, their gleeful shrieks resonating with the spirit of the holiday. David and Catherine walked hand in hand, their hearts lightened by the beauty of the moment. They visited a nearby Christmas market, the aroma of roasted chestnuts and mulled wine wafting through the air, inviting them to partake in the festive offerings. As they wandered among the stalls, they marveled at handmade ornaments and unique gifts, sharing smiles and playful banter as they explored the holiday spirit. In the midst of the joy, Catherine couldn't help but feel the twinge of anxiety creeping back in. She knew they were still at the beginning of their journey, and the thought of challenges ahead made her heart race. She wanted to protect what they had built, but the uncertainty of the future weighed heavily on her mind. David had shared his past with her, but there were still layers to uncover, uncharted territory that lay ahead. As they paused to watch a group of carolers singing a cheerful melody, Catherine felt a surge of determination. She took a deep breath, grounding herself in the present moment. She would not allow fear to overshadow the happiness they had cultivated. She knew that together, they could face anything that came their way. That evening, as they returned to the apartment, the warmth of their shared experiences filled the space around them. David lit a fire in the fireplace, the crackling flames casting a cozy glow that mirrored the warmth in their hearts. They settled onto the couch, wrapped in a blanket, and reflected on the day's adventures, laughter and joy punctuating their conversation. As the fire danced before them, David felt a sense of peace wash over him. He glanced at Catherine, her eyes sparkling with happiness, and realized that this was what he had longed for, a love that could weather any storm. They had faced their fears, and now they stood united, ready to embrace whatever challenges lay ahead. The first light of dawn had brought with it a new beginning, and as they nestled closer together, David felt a profound sense of hope. He understood that their journey would be filled with twists and turns, but he was no longer afraid. With Catherine by his side, he knew they could navigate the path ahead, crafting a future that was uniquely theirs. As the night deepened and the city outside glimmered under the blanket of snow, David and Catherine held each other tightly, their hearts beating in sync. They had weathered the storm, and now, with the dawn of a new day on the horizon, they were ready to step forward into the future together, hand in hand, heart to heart. Chapter 15. What Lies Beneath the Ashes. As the days inched closer to Christmas, the atmosphere in New York transformed into a festive wonderland. Each street adorned with twinkling lights and cheerful decorations that brought joy to the hearts of its inhabitants. The soft blanket of snow that had fallen after the storm lingered, turning the bustling city into a serene landscape of white, a pristine canvas upon which dreams were painted. David and Catherine reveled in this magical time, their bond deepening amidst the holiday cheer. Each morning brought a renewed sense of excitement. They would awaken to the gentle light of dawn spilling through their window, casting soft shadows that danced across the walls of their cozy apartment. David cherished these moments, watching Catherine's sleepy smile blossom as she stirred from her dreams, her presence a bright spot in his life. The warmth of their connection felt like a protective shield against the world outside, a safe haven they had created together. On one particular morning, As sunlight filtered through the window, David suggested a day out in Central Park, a place where the winter landscape was breathtaking and the atmosphere filled with laughter and joy. Catherine's eyes sparkled with enthusiasm, and they bundled up in warm coats, scarves, and mittens, ready to embrace the chilly day. Central Park was transformed into a winter paradise. The trees stood tall, their branches draped with glistening icicles that caught the light and sparkled like diamonds. The ground was covered in a thick layer of snow, inviting visitors to engage in the simple pleasures of winter. Families and friends filled the park, laughter ringing out like music as they built snowmen, made snow angels, and engaged in playful snowball fights. David and Catherine wandered hand in hand, their breath visible in the cold air as they admired the scenery. The beauty of the moment enveloped them, a cocoon of warmth amidst the chilly atmosphere. Catherine felt a sense of freedom as they strolled, the burdens of her anxieties momentarily lifted by the sheer joy surrounding them. The world felt alive, vibrant with the spirit of the season, and she was grateful to experience it with David by her side. As they approached a small hill, David's eyes lit up with mischief. He pointed toward a group of children sliding down the slope on sleds, their shrieks of laughter echoing through the park. With a playful grin, he suggested they give it a try. Catherine hesitated for a moment, her heart racing with excitement and a hint of fear, but the thrill of adventure outweighed her reservations. They climbed the hill, the snow crunching beneath their feet, and as they reached the top, Catherine looked out over the park, marveling at the beauty surrounding them. David took her hand, and together they sat on a sled, their hearts pounding with anticipation. With a gentle push, they were off, gliding down the hill, laughter bubbling up as the wind whipped around them. The exhilaration of the ride filled them with joy, a moment of pure bliss that encapsulated the magic of the season. As they reached the bottom, they tumbled off the sled, landing in a pile of soft snow. They lay there for a moment, breathless and laughing, their eyes sparkling with delight. In that instant, Catherine realized how much David had come to mean to her, a source of joy and a reminder of the beauty life had to offer. After a few more exhilarating runs down the hill, they took a break, sitting on a bench surrounded by snow-covered trees. David noticed Catherine's cheeks were flushed from the cold and exhilaration, a beautiful hue that made her look radiant. He felt a surge of affection for her, a deep connection that anchored him in the present moment. As they sat side by side, he felt as though time itself had paused, allowing them to simply enjoy each other's company. While the world bustled around them, David took a moment to reflect on how far they had come. Just weeks ago, he had been engulfed in his past, afraid of opening up, afraid of the shadows that lingered. But now, sitting beside Catherine, he felt a sense of clarity. He understood that the journey of healing was ongoing, but with her by his side, he had the strength to face whatever lay ahead. Catherine, too, found herself lost in thought as she gazed at the snowy landscape. The beauty of the park mirrored the transformation within her heart. She had spent so long worrying about the future, but in this moment, surrounded by David's warmth and the magic of winter, she felt an overwhelming sense of peace. She knew that their love was not just a fleeting moment. It was a promise of something real and lasting. As they strolled through the park, they stumbled upon a small ice skating rink. Laughter and music filled the air, inviting them to join in the festivities. David's eyes sparkled with excitement as he suggested they give it a try. Catherine's heart raced at the thought. She had never been ice skating before. However, the thrill of adventure and David's encouragement pushed her to step out of her comfort zone once more. They rented skates and laced them up, the chill of the ice sending shivers of anticipation down Catherine's spine. As they stepped onto the rink, she felt unsteady, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. David took her hand, his grip reassuring as he guided her onto the ice. With each hesitant glide, Catherine felt the anxiety begin to melt away, replaced by the joy of the experience. At first, she wobbled, unsure of her balance, but David was patient, his presence grounding her. As she found her rhythm, laughter bubbled up between them, filling the air with joy. The other skaters danced gracefully around them, but in that moment, all that mattered was their connection, two souls intertwining in the beauty of the season. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting a golden hue over the park, Catherine and David took a break. Their faces flushed from the cold and excitement. They found a spot at the edge of the rink, their hearts still racing from the thrill of skating. David wrapped an arm around Catherine, pulling her close, and she rested her head against his shoulder, feeling utterly content. In that serene moment, Catherine's thoughts drifted back to the conversations they had shared, the vulnerabilities laid bare, the trust that had blossomed between them. She realized that these experiences were not merely about the activities they engaged in. They were about the foundation they were building together. Each laugh, each shared glance, was a thread weaving them closer. As they sat there, watching the sun set behind the trees, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, Catherine felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. She knew that life would continue to present challenges, but she was ready to face them with David. Together, they would navigate the uncertainties, transforming obstacles into stepping stones toward a brighter future. As the first stars began to twinkle in the evening sky, they stood to leave, hand in hand, ready to continue their adventure. The air was crisp, and the sounds of the park began to fade as they walked back toward the warmth of their apartment. The city was alive with the spirit of the season, and David and Catherine were at the center of it all, a duo navigating the world together. That night, as they returned home, the apartment felt warm and inviting, a haven away from the hustle and bustle outside. David lit a fire in the fireplace, and they settled on the couch, cocooned in a blanket. The flickering flames cast a soft glow, creating an atmosphere of intimacy and comfort. As they reflected on their day, Catherine's heart swelled with affection for David. She felt a deep sense of connection, one that was both exhilarating and grounding. She had let go of the weight of her worries, trusting that together they could face whatever came their way. In that moment, surrounded by the warmth of the fire and the soft glow of love, Catherine knew they were creating a tapestry of memories that would carry them forward. Each thread, each experience, was woven into the fabric of their relationship, forming a beautiful narrative that spoke of resilience, hope, and an unwavering bond. As they leaned into each other, enveloped in the warmth of the fire and the love they had nurtured, Catherine felt a profound sense of peace. The uncertainties of the future loomed, but they were no longer daunting. They were simply part of the journey they would navigate together. With the promise of Christmas just days away, David and Catherine settled into the rhythm of their shared existence, ready to embrace whatever awaited them in the enchanting days to come. Chapter 16. The Long Night's End. As Christmas Eve descended upon New York City, a palpable magic filled the air, weaving through the streets like a shimmering thread of hope and joy. The city was alive with celebration, the festive lights twinkling like stars against the night sky, creating a breathtaking tapestry of color and warmth. David and Catherine reveled in the enchantment that enveloped them, their hearts brimming with excitement as they prepared to celebrate the holiday together. In the days leading up to Christmas, they had embraced every opportunity to indulge in the spirit of the season. They visited holiday markets adorned with artisan crafts, shared cups of hot cocoa topped with whipped cream, and wandered through streets lined with towering Christmas trees, each one a beacon of joy. They had even participated in a charity event, volunteering their time to help those in need, a gesture that deepened their connection and reinforced their belief in the power of love and kindness. On this particular evening, Catherine awoke to the soft glow of candlelight spilling into their bedroom, casting a warm radiance across the room. She turned to find David still asleep beside her, his face relaxed in slumber, a peaceful smile playing on his lips. She marveled at the sight, feeling an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the love they had cultivated. The past months had been a journey of healing and discovery, and as the holiday approached, she felt their bond solidifying like the strongest of anchors. The day unfolded with an air of excitement, and Catherine busied herself with final preparations for their Christmas Eve celebration. She had planned a cozy evening at home, complete with a homemade dinner and all the trimmings. The aroma of roasted turkey and freshly baked bread filled the apartment, enveloping them in warmth as they worked together in the kitchen. David helped, chopping vegetables and stirring pots, his laughter filling the air as they playfully competed to see who could whip the cream the fastest. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the city, they set the table, arranging candles and festive decorations that Catherine had collected throughout the season. The flickering candlelight created a serene atmosphere, transforming their apartment into a haven of warmth and love. They stood back to admire their handiwork, the scene before them a perfect representation of the holiday spirit they had embraced together. With the table set and the meal prepared, David lit the fireplace, the crackling flames adding to the ambience of the evening. They settled onto the couch, wrapped in a cozy blanket, their hearts racing with anticipation. Christmas Eve had always been a time of magic for Catherine, and she couldn't help but feel that this year would be particularly special. As they sipped wine and enjoyed their dinner, she felt the weight of her earlier anxieties begin to lift. After their meal, David suggested they create a new tradition, one that would reflect their journey together. He proposed they write letters to each other, expressing their hopes, dreams, and love for one another. The idea filled Catherine with delight, and she eagerly agreed. They gathered their thoughts and settled at the kitchen table, the soft glow of the candles illuminating their faces as they poured their hearts onto the pages. As she wrote, Catherine felt the words flowing effortlessly, each sentence a reflection of the love and gratitude she felt for David. She wrote of her hopes for the future, of the adventures she envisioned them sharing, and the unwavering support she promised to give him. The act of writing became a cathartic release, a way to solidify the bond they had forged in the face of adversity. David, too, found himself immersed in the exercise. As he penned his thoughts, he reflected on the transformative power of love, the way Catherine had breathed new life into his world. He wrote of his dreams for their relationship, of the family he envisioned building with her, and of the unwavering commitment he felt to nurture and protect their love. Each word felt like a vow, a promise that they would face the future together, hand in hand. After they finished writing, they exchanged letters, their hearts racing with anticipation. As Catherine read David's words, tears of joy filled her eyes. His vulnerability and honesty resonated deeply within her, and she felt a profound sense of connection. He had opened his heart to her in a way that reaffirmed their love, and in that moment, she knew they were bound by something truly special. David, too, felt the weight of Catherine's words as he read her letter. Her dreams mirrored his own, and he felt a surge of love that wrapped around him like a warm embrace. The act of sharing their thoughts brought them closer, reinforcing the foundation they had built together. As they exchanged glances filled with understanding, a silent acknowledgement passed between them, a recognition of the journey they had undertaken and the love that had blossomed in its wake. With their letters exchanged, they turned their attention to the tradition of gift-giving. They had decided to keep it simple this year, focusing on meaningful gifts rather than extravagant ones. As they sat by the fire, they shared laughter and stories about the gifts they had chosen for one another, their eyes sparkling with excitement. David reached for a small box, the wrapping adorned with a festive bow, and handed it to Catherine with a grin. She accepted it eagerly, her heart pounding in anticipation. As she peeled away the wrapping, her breath caught in her throat. Inside was a delicate silver necklace, a tiny heart pendant shimmering in the candlelight. David had designed it himself, a symbol of their love and the journey they had shared. Catherine's eyes filled with tears of joy as she looked at David, overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness of his gift. She reached out and hugged him tightly, feeling the warmth of his embrace surround her. It was a perfect representation of their connection, a reminder of the love they had cultivated and the promise of what was to come. In return, Catherine presented David with a gift of her own. He unwrapped the carefully crafted box to find a leather-bound journal, the cover embossed with intricate designs. It was a place for him to document his thoughts, dreams, and experiences, a space for reflection and growth. David's heart swelled as he realized the significance of her gift. It was not just a journal, but a testament to her belief in his journey. As the evening unfolded, they exchanged stories and memories, reminiscing about their time together and the milestones they had achieved. The warmth of the fire crackled as they reflected on the challenges they had faced, the moments of vulnerability that had brought them closer, and the love that had blossomed against all odds. With the clock inching closer to midnight, they stepped outside onto the balcony, the crisp winter air wrapping around them like a comforting blanket. The city sparkled with holiday lights, each twinkling star above them a reminder of the magic that surrounded them. They stood in silence, savoring the moment as they watched snowflakes drift gracefully from the sky. In that quiet stillness, Catherine felt a deep sense of contentment wash over her. She knew that the coming year would bring its own set of challenges, but as long as they faced them together, they would emerge stronger than ever. She reached for David's hand, their fingers intertwining as they stood united against the world, hearts beating in sync. As the clock struck midnight, marking the arrival of Christmas Day, David and Catherine shared a soft kiss, the warmth of their love igniting the magic of the moment. It was a promise, a vow that they would continue to navigate the journey of life together, no matter what lay ahead. With hearts full of hope and love, they retreated back inside, ready to embrace the holiday spirit that awaited them. As they settled in for the night, surrounded by the warmth of their home and the love they had nurtured, Catherine knew that this Christmas Eve would be etched in their hearts forever, a moment in time that marked the beginning of a beautiful new chapter in their lives. Chapter 17. Underneath the Painted Smiles. As the first light of dawn broke on Christmas morning, a soft glow filled the apartment, illuminating the remnants of the night's festivities. The sounds of the bustling city outside blended with the warmth of the fire crackling in the hearth, creating a soothing atmosphere that wrapped around David and Catherine like a familiar blanket. They awoke nestled together under the covers, the memory of their shared kisses from the night before lingering like a sweet promise. The excitement of the holiday pulsed through their veins as they exchanged sleepy smiles, the joy of Christmas morning washing over them like a gentle tide. With the sun rising higher in the sky, the city sparkled beneath a layer of fresh snow, turning the streets into a winter wonderland. The allure of the holiday season filled the air with a sense of possibility, as if the universe itself were whispering promises of new beginnings. David and Catherine had decided to keep their Christmas celebration intimate, focusing on the essence of the holiday rather than the extravagance that often accompanied it. They exchanged gifts quietly, each item a token of their affection and understanding of one another. The thoughtful gestures reflected the love they had cultivated, deepening the bonds that had formed between them over the months. With their hearts full, they prepared a simple breakfast, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the scent of cinnamon rolls baking in the oven. The kitchen buzzed with energy as they worked side by side, laughter punctuating their morning as they reminisced about their time together. Catherine's heart swelled with warmth as she watched David, his eyes alight with enthusiasm, and she felt a surge of gratitude for the love they shared. As they savored their breakfast, a comfortable silence enveloped them, filled with unspoken understanding and contentment. The world outside faded away, leaving only the two of them, two souls intertwined in a journey of love and discovery. With every bite of the sweet cinnamon rolls, Catherine felt a sense of fulfillment, knowing that this holiday marked not just the celebration of Christmas, but also the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. After breakfast, they bundled up in warm clothes and ventured outside into the brisk winter air. The city was alive with holiday cheer. Families strolled hand in hand, children laughed as they built snowmen, and couples embraced in the joy of the season. The magic of Christmas wrapped around them, igniting a sense of adventure in Catherine's heart. They walked through Central Park, the pristine blanket of snow crunching beneath their boots as they admired the beauty surrounding them. The trees, heavy with snow, stood like sentinels, their branches laden with glistening icicles that sparkled in the sunlight. Couples and families gathered around, exchanging hugs and laughter, and Catherine felt her heart swell with warmth as she watched them. As they strolled deeper into the park, David suddenly stopped, a mischievous glint in his eye. He knelt down, scooping up a handful of snow, and Catherine's breath caught in her throat as she realized what was coming next. Before she could react, he playfully tossed the snowball at her, laughing as it splattered against her coat. In that moment, laughter filled the air, breaking the stillness of the winter day. Catherine, her heart racing, quickly gathered her own handful of snow and retaliated, throwing it back at David with a gleeful shout. Their impromptu snowball fight turned into a joyful dance, their laughter echoing through the park as they playfully chased one another, their love for each other blossoming in the magic of the moment. It was a reminder of the simple joys of life, of the happiness that could be found in shared laughter and playful moments. After a while, they collapsed into the snow, breathless from laughter, their cheeks flushed with excitement. They lay side by side, watching the clouds drift lazily across the sky, feeling utterly content in each other's presence. It was a moment suspended in time, a beautiful pause in their lives that reminded them of the power of love and connection. As the day wore on, they returned to their apartment, still aglow with the joy of their adventure. The warmth of their home welcomed them back, and David took Catherine's hand, leading her to the living room where a small Christmas tree stood adorned with twinkling lights and cherished ornaments. Each ornament held a memory, a trip they had taken, a moment they had shared, and Catherine felt a rush of affection as she traced her fingers over the familiar shapes. In that moment, David proposed they set intentions for the upcoming year, a way to mark the transition into the new year with purpose and clarity. They sat on the floor, surrounded by the glow of the tree, and took turns sharing their dreams and aspirations for the future. Catherine spoke of her desire to continue pursuing her passions, to grow both personally and professionally, and to nurture the love she had found with David. David shared his hopes for their relationship, expressing his commitment to support Catherine in her endeavors while also nurturing his own aspirations. With each intention shared, they felt a renewed sense of purpose and connection, their hearts intertwined in a beautiful tapestry of dreams and desires. As the clock inched closer to midnight, they reflected on the past year, acknowledging the challenges they had faced and the triumphs they had celebrated. They were no longer the same people they had been when they first met. They had grown, evolved, and discovered the strength of their love. As the last minutes of the year ticked away, they prepared to welcome the new year with open hearts. They poured glasses of champagne and settled on the balcony, the crisp winter air invigorating and refreshing. The city below was alive with celebration, fireworks illuminating the night sky in vibrant bursts of color, filling the air with a sense of anticipation and joy. As the clock struck midnight, David turned to Catherine, his eyes filled with warmth and love. They raised their glasses in a toast, celebrating not just the arrival of the new year, but also the journey they had taken together. In that moment, surrounded by the beauty of the fireworks and the warmth of their love, they knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. With their hearts full of hope and excitement for the future, they leaned in for a kiss, their lips meeting under the shimmering sky. It was a kiss filled with promise, a vow to continue nurturing their love and supporting each other as they navigated the twists and turns of life. As the fireworks faded into the night, they stood wrapped in each other's arms, ready to embrace whatever the new year would bring. They felt a sense of peace wash over them, a knowing that they were exactly where they were meant to be, hand in hand, hearts aligned in love. With the dawn of the new year breaking, David and Catherine retreated back inside, ready to create new memories and continue their journey together. The magic of the holiday season lingered in their hearts, a reminder of the love that had blossomed and the future that awaited them. In that moment, they understood that their story was just beginning, a beautiful narrative filled with love, adventure, and the promise of new beginnings. Chapter 18. Severed, but whole. As the new year unfolded, David and Catherine embraced the possibilities that lay ahead. The world felt ripe with opportunity, the crisp winter air invigorating as they ventured out into the city, ready to explore what life had to offer. However, as they settled back into their routines, lingering echoes of the past began to surface, casting a shadow over their newfound happiness. In the days that followed, Catherine found herself haunted by memories she had tried to leave behind. Her childhood had been marked by turmoil, and as the year progressed, those memories crept into her thoughts, whispering reminders of insecurities she thought she had conquered. It was as though a fog had settled around her heart, blurring the edges of her joy and leaving her feeling vulnerable and exposed. David, too, felt the weight of the past as he navigated his own memories. Though his heart was full with love for Catherine, the scars of his previous relationships lingered, casting doubt on his ability to fully embrace the future. He wanted nothing more than to support Catherine through her struggles, yet he found himself grappling with his own fears, questioning whether he could be the partner she deserved. One evening, as they settled into the cozy embrace of their living room, David noticed a flicker of sadness in Catherine's eyes. She sat curled up on the couch, lost in thought, the light from the nearby lamp casting gentle shadows across her face. It was a familiar sight, one that tugged at his heartstrings, and he wished he could penetrate the veil of her silence, to reach into her thoughts and reassure her that she was not alone. Unable to shake the feeling that something was troubling her, David leaned closer, silently urging her to share her burden. Yet, Catherine remained wrapped in her own world, her thoughts swirling like a tempest. It was not that she wished to shut David out. Rather, she struggled to articulate the emotions that swirled within her, the remnants of her past clashing with her present happiness. Days turned into weeks, and despite the warmth of their love, the distance between them began to widen. Catherine found solace in moments of solitude, retreating into her art and pouring her heart onto the canvas. She had always found a sense of peace in creation, and as she painted, she could express the feelings that words failed to capture. The vibrant colors danced across the canvas, each stroke a release, a cathartic reminder that she was still capable of beauty even amid her turmoil. David, for his part, immersed himself in work, channeling his energy into his career. While he was passionate about what he did, there were times when he felt an emptiness, a longing to connect with Catherine in a way that transcended their usual routines. The laughter and joy they once shared felt like a distant memory, and he yearned to bridge the chasm that had begun to form between them. One evening, as Catherine stood before her easel, lost in a whirlwind of colors, she caught a glimpse of David watching her from the doorway. His presence stirred something deep within her, a flicker of recognition that reminded her of the love they had built. But along with that recognition came a pang of guilt. She knew he sensed her struggle and felt powerless to ease the burden she carried. As the days continued to pass, the shadows of their pasts loomed larger. David found himself plagued by dreams of lost love, of the relationships that had shaped him, each encounter leaving a mark on his soul. He would wake in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, the remnants of heartache still vivid in his mind. It was in those moments that he felt most vulnerable, terrified that he would lose Catherine in the same way he had lost those before her. The turning point came on a chilly winter night when David could no longer ignore the distance between them. He watched as Catherine poured herself into her painting, her brush strokes becoming more frantic as she wrestled with her emotions. Sensing the urgency of the moment, he decided it was time to confront the shadows that threatened to engulf them both. With a resolve born from love, David approached Catherine, his heart pounding with a mix of apprehension and determination. He settled beside her, taking a moment to gather his thoughts. The silence that enveloped them was heavy, thick with unspoken words and emotions. As he gazed at her painting, he saw the turmoil reflected in the chaotic strokes and colors, a visual representation of the battle she was waging within herself. In that moment, David understood that they could no longer hide from the shadows of their pasts. They had to confront them together, to share the burdens that had been weighing them down. It was a leap of faith, one that required vulnerability and trust. He gently placed his hand on Catherine's shoulder, a silent offering of support and love. As if sensing his presence, Catherine paused, her brush hovering above the canvas. She turned to face him, her eyes brimming with unshed tears, and in that moment, David felt a surge of empathy. He knew that beneath her sadness lay a reservoir of strength, and he wanted nothing more than to help her access it. In that quiet space, Catherine took a deep breath, the weight of her emotions beginning to lift. She felt the warmth of David's hand on her shoulder, a grounding presence that urged her to open her heart. And so she did. She spoke of her childhood, of the struggles she had faced, the wounds that still ached even in the light of their love. With each word, she felt a sense of release, as if the act of sharing her story was freeing her from the chains of her past. David listened intently, his heart aching for the pain she had endured. He, too, began to share his own struggles, the fears that had haunted him and the lessons he had learned from the heartache. As they exchanged their stories, a powerful bond formed between them, a realization that they were not alone in their struggles, but rather united in their shared humanity. In that moment of vulnerability, the shadows that had once loomed over them began to fade. The act of confronting their pasts together illuminated the path forward, revealing the strength they possessed as a couple. They understood that their love was not a refuge from pain, but a safe space in which they could heal together. With newfound resolve, they embraced the challenges that lay ahead. They made a promise to support one another, to honor their journeys while forging a future built on trust and understanding. The barriers that had once divided them crumbled, leaving only the pure essence of their love, a love that had weathered storms and emerged stronger. As they sat side by side, painting and sharing their stories, the colors on the canvas began to shift and transform. Each stroke became a celebration of resilience, a testament to the love that had blossomed amidst the shadows. Together, they created a masterpiece that reflected not only their individual journeys, but also the unity they had forged in the face of adversity. With the night deepening around them, David and Catherine knew that they had embarked on a new chapter, one filled with hope and possibility. The past would always be a part of them, but it no longer defined their present. They were ready to step into the light, hand in hand, ready to embrace the future with open hearts. In that moment, as the stars twinkled above and the world continued to spin, they realized that love was not merely a destination but a journey that they would navigate together, one brush stroke at a time. Chapter 19. The Bridge of Forgiveness. As winter settled in, bringing with it the chill of the season, David and Catherine embraced their renewed commitment to each other. With every passing day, they navigated their respective journeys of healing, their love growing deeper as they faced the shadows of their pasts together. Yet, as they ventured into the complexities of their lives, an unexpected secret began to weave itself into the fabric of their relationship, threatening to unravel the trust they had painstakingly built. The tension began to build subtly at first, manifesting as a shift in Catherine's demeanor. While her passion for art flourished, there were moments when David caught glimpses of something darker lurking beneath her surface, a flicker of unease that seemed to emerge when she received an unexpected phone call or text. Her laughter would falter, and a cloud of worry would pass over her face before she would quickly mask it with a smile. David's heart tightened at the sight, his instincts warning him that something was amiss. One evening, as they settled into their cozy routine, Catherine received a phone call just as they were about to start dinner. The sudden ring sliced through the warm atmosphere, causing her to jump slightly. David watched as her expression shifted, the light in her eyes dimming for a brief moment before she stepped away to take the call. He could see her pacing, her voice low and guarded, and as she spoke, her features tightened with concern. When she returned to the kitchen, Catherine wore a practiced smile, but David could sense the weight she carried. It was as if a fog had descended upon their shared space, dulling the warmth and intimacy that had defined their relationship in recent weeks. He wanted to press her to share what was troubling her, but he also knew the importance of allowing her the space to confide when she was ready. Still, the knot in his stomach grew tighter with each passing day, and he couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows of her past were creeping back into their lives. Days turned into weeks, and the phone calls continued. Each time Catherine received one, David felt the distance between them expand, a chasm filled with unspoken words and hidden worries. He wanted to reassure her, to remind her that she was safe with him, yet he felt powerless to penetrate the wall she had begun to build around herself. In his heart, he feared that the secrets she kept might sever the bond they had worked so hard to strengthen. One rainy afternoon, David returned home after a long day at work, his mind buzzing with thoughts of Catherine. As he entered the apartment, he sensed a tension that hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Catherine was at her easel, painting with fervor, but there was an urgency to her brushstrokes that felt different, as though she were attempting to expel a storm brewing within her. Not wanting to disrupt her, David busied himself with preparing dinner, but his gaze frequently drifted toward Catherine. Her concentration was palpable, and the vibrant colors on her canvas danced wildly under her deft touch. He admired her talent, but couldn't help but notice how her features were drawn tight with unspoken emotions, a storm swirling just beneath her skin. As he stirred a pot on the stove, David decided it was time to confront the growing distance. He took a deep breath, steadying his resolve before stepping closer to her, his heart pounding with anticipation. He wanted to reach out, to tell her that he was there for her, but the words felt caught in his throat. Just as he opened his mouth to speak, Catherine paused, her brush hovering above the canvas. She turned toward him, her eyes wide with emotion, and for a moment, he thought she might finally share what was weighing on her heart. But instead, she blinked back tears, the vulnerability in her expression pulling at his heartstrings. Then, without a word, she returned to her painting, the moment slipping away like sand through their fingers. That evening, as they sat together over dinner, an uncomfortable silence filled the space between them. David could no longer ignore the feeling of impending doom. He needed to know what was happening, to understand the source of her distress. Gathering his courage, he placed his fork down and met her gaze, a quiet determination in his eyes. It was time to address the shadows head-on. But just as he was about to speak, Catherine's phone rang again, cutting through the stillness. She flinched at the sound, and a flicker of fear crossed her face. David watched as she glanced at the screen, hesitation evident in her posture before she answered. The conversation was brief, and as she hung up, the air felt heavy with unspoken words. David's heart sank. The knot in his stomach tightened painfully. That night, sleep eluded David. He lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing with worry. What could be so important that it caused Catherine to retreat within herself? He recalled the way her demeanor had shifted, how her laughter had become less frequent, and the way she had avoided his gaze during their meals. Each phone call felt like a secret that pulled her further away from him, leaving him feeling isolated and helpless. In the stillness of the night, David resolved to confront Catherine again in the morning. He knew it was time to break the silence, to peel back the layers of secrecy that had begun to build a wall between them. He loved her too deeply to allow doubt to fester in their relationship. The light of their love had flickered but not extinguished. It just needed a spark to reignite the flame. The following day dawned bright and cold, the sunlight pouring through the windows like golden honey. David rose early, determined to create a warm and inviting atmosphere to foster open communication. He prepared breakfast, filling the apartment with the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee and the sweet scent of pancakes. The moment Catherine entered the kitchen, he felt a swell of hope. As they sat down to eat, David took a moment to observe her. The way the sunlight danced across her features, illuminating the shadows that had lingered there for far too long. He needed to approach this delicately, to let her know that he was there for her, ready to listen without judgment. After a few bites of breakfast, David set his fork down and turned to her, his heart pounding in his chest. The moment was upon him, the air thick with anticipation. He gently broke the silence that had persisted for far too long. With a steady voice, he expressed his concerns, his need to understand the weight she carried, and his unwavering support for her journey. As he spoke, Catherine's eyes widened, and for a moment, he feared he had pushed too hard. But then something shifted within her, and the tears that had been brimming in her eyes finally spilled over. The wall she had built began to crumble, and as she took a deep breath, she finally let the weight of her secrets spill forth. With each revelation, David felt the burden lift, the connection between them strengthening as they navigated the intricate web of emotions and fears that had entangled their hearts. Catherine spoke of her past, the experiences that had shaped her, the scars that still ached. She revealed the phone calls had been from an old friend who had struggled with similar issues, someone she had once helped but now seemed to be in a dark place herself. Catherine had felt compelled to support her, but the emotional toll had been heavier than she had anticipated. David listened intently, his heart aching for the pain she had carried alone. He realized that Catherine's struggle had not been with him, but with her own history, the desire to help others sometimes overshadowing her own needs. In sharing her story, she dismantled the barrier that had threatened to come between them. As they talked, the warmth of their connection blossomed anew. David reached across the table, taking Catherine's hand in his, their fingers intertwining as they faced the shadows together. The act felt like a promise, a commitment to navigate the complexities of their lives as a united front. In that moment of vulnerability, they found solace in each other, understanding that love was not merely a sanctuary but a powerful force that could conquer even the darkest of secrets. Together, they emerged from the depths of uncertainty, ready to face the challenges that lay ahead, strengthened by the shared weight of their truths. The day continued to unfold with a renewed sense of hope. They spent the afternoon together, their laughter ringing through the apartment as they explored the city, hand in hand. With each step, the shadows began to recede, replaced by the vibrant colors of their love and the promise of a future unmarred by the secrets of the past. As the sun set, casting a golden hue over the skyline, David and Catherine returned home, their hearts light and filled with anticipation. They understood that while the past would always be a part of them, it would not dictate their future. They had emerged from the web of secrets, stronger and more connected than ever before. In that moment, surrounded by the warmth of their love and the promise of new beginnings, David and Catherine knew that they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they would navigate the complexities of life, embracing the journey with open hearts, determined to weave a beautiful tapestry of love that would last a lifetime. Chapter 20. A Love Reborn. The morning sun poured through the large windows of David and Catherine's apartment, casting a warm glow that enveloped the space in golden light. It was the beginning of a new day, one filled with promise and the lingering warmth of the love they had nurtured through the challenges of their past. As Catherine stirred awake, the events of the previous weeks came rushing back to her. The moments of vulnerability, the sharing of secrets, and the unbreakable bond that had formed in the aftermath. She smiled softly, knowing that they had emerged stronger, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. David had already risen, the sounds of him bustling around in the kitchen pulling Catherine from the depths of her dreams. She listened to the rhythmic clatter of pots and pans, the comforting hum of normalcy that surrounded her like a cocoon. Rising from the bed, she stretched and took a moment to appreciate the newfound sense of peace that filled her heart. Today felt different. It was the start of a chapter that held the potential for joy and fulfillment. As Catherine stepped into the kitchen, the aroma of fresh coffee and sizzling eggs enveloped her senses, inviting her to join the warmth of the moment. David turned to her, his face lighting up with a smile that radiated love and happiness. The simple act of sharing breakfast together felt like a celebration, a ritual that affirmed their connection and the strength of their relationship. Over breakfast, they spoke without words, exchanging glances filled with understanding and affection. Every shared bite of food, every gentle touch of their hands, deepened the intimacy between them. Catherine felt a sense of gratitude wash over her, a reminder of the journey they had taken to arrive at this point, a journey marked by resilience, honesty, and unwavering support. After breakfast, they decided to explore the city, eager to embrace the beautiful day that awaited them. They walked hand in hand through the bustling streets, the vibrant colors of autumn leaves decorating the sidewalks like a painter's palette. The city thrummed with life, and every corner seemed to offer new adventures waiting to be discovered. David and Catherine took their time, savoring the little moments, their laughter echoing as they wandered through parks, boutiques, and quaint cafes. As they strolled through a picturesque neighborhood, they stumbled upon a small art gallery tucked between two charming storefronts. Its rustic exterior and inviting window displays drew them in, and Catherine felt a spark of inspiration ignite within her. She had always found solace in art, a language through which she could express her innermost thoughts and emotions. The gallery was filled with vibrant paintings, each piece telling its own story, echoing the essence of the artists who had created them. They spent hours immersed in the art, sharing their interpretations and feelings about each piece. Catherine felt a renewed sense of creativity blooming within her. The gallery sparked a desire to paint again, to pour her emotions onto the canvas and to capture the beauty of their journey. David, ever the supportive partner, encouraged her to pursue her passion, reminding her of the joy that art brought to her life. As they left the gallery, Catherine's heart swelled with excitement. She felt invigorated, ready to embrace her artistic journey anew. David sensed her enthusiasm and proposed that they dedicate a corner of their apartment as an art studio, a sacred space where she could freely create without limitations. The idea thrilled Catherine, and together they began to envision the transformation of their home. a sanctuary where creativity could flourish alongside their love. That evening, as twilight descended and painted the sky in hues of purple and gold, they returned home to discuss their plans for the studio. Sitting together on the couch, Catherine shared her vision of what the space could become, and David listened intently, his heart swelling with pride at her passion. In that moment, they solidified their commitment to not only each other but to the pursuit of their dreams, knowing that they would support one another every step of the way. The next few weeks unfolded like a vibrant tapestry as they worked together to transform their apartment. They painted walls, arranged furniture, and hung artwork that spoke to their hearts. Each stroke of the brush felt like a declaration of their love, and with every new addition to their home, they infused their space with their shared history, the laughter, the tears, the joy, and the healing. Catherine immersed herself in her painting, the studio becoming her refuge. With each canvas she filled, she poured out the emotions that had once burdened her, transforming pain into beauty. David often joined her, his presence a constant source of encouragement. He would sit beside her, reading or sketching, his quiet support a testament to his unwavering love. Together, they cultivated an environment rich with creativity and inspiration, a testament to their journey of healing. As winter deepened, the couple began to share their work with the world. Catherine organized a small exhibition at the local gallery, inviting friends, family, and the community to witness her art, a celebration of her journey, her resilience, and her love for David. The night of the exhibition was filled with anticipation and excitement, the atmosphere buzzing with energy as people admired her work. David stood by her side, his pride overflowing as he watched Catherine engage with the guests, her laughter mingling with the sounds of appreciation echoing through the room. Her artwork resonated with everyone, each piece reflecting not just her skill but the depth of her emotions and the journey they had taken together. As the evening progressed, Catherine took a moment to step back and take in the scene. Surrounded by friends and loved ones, she felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. The exhibition was not just a showcase of her art, but a manifestation of her spirit, a testament to her growth and the love she had found in David. In that moment, she realized that she had not only rediscovered her passion for painting, but had also unearthed a deeper understanding of herself and her capacity for love. When the night came to an end, Catherine and David stood together, hand in hand, surrounded by the remnants of laughter and joy. They had faced challenges, navigated through the web of secrets, and emerged stronger, more connected than ever. Their love had become a beacon of hope, illuminating the path before them. As they left the gallery, David turned to Catherine, his eyes shining with affection. He pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her in a tender embrace. In that moment, she felt the weight of the world lift from her shoulders, replaced by a sense of belonging and peace. Together, they stood on the precipice of a new dawn, ready to embrace the future with open hearts. As they walked home, the night air crisp and clear, Catherine reflected on the journey they had taken, the struggles they had faced, and the love that had carried them through. The past would always be a part of them, but it no longer defined their present. Instead, it became a source of strength, a reminder of how far they had come. They arrived home, the warmth of the apartment welcoming them back like an old friend. As they settled in, Catherine glanced around at the space they had created together. It was more than just an apartment. It was a sanctuary filled with love, laughter, and dreams waiting to be fulfilled. In the quiet moments that followed, as they shared a cup of tea and recounted the evening's highlights, Catherine felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. She had found her voice again, and with David by her side, she knew that there were no limits to what they could achieve together. They had woven a tapestry of love that embraced not only their individual journeys, but also the shared dreams that lay ahead. With the promise of a new day on the horizon, They knew they were ready to face whatever life threw their way. Together, they would continue to create, to explore, and to love fiercely, weaving their story one beautiful chapter at a time. The dawn was breaking, and it signified not only the beginning of a new day, but also the unveiling of their most profound dreams. An adventure that would stretch far beyond the horizon, where love reigned supreme and the possibilities were endless.